Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat, the case of Laura Wallen. Laura Wallen was born on February 10, 1986, to parents Mark and Gwen Wallen. She grew up in Olney, Maryland, alongside her older sister Jennifer, with whom she had a very close relationship. Laura's passion was in helping others, which led her to pursue a career as a social science teacher. The investigation into her disappearance began on September 5, 2017. It was led by Montgomery County Police Chief Tom Manger. He worked alongside Laura's family and friends, as well as her students. A group of more than 20 people, led by Saquan Maxwell, a former student of Laura's, came together to spread the word about Laura's disappearance by distributing flyers throughout the neighborhood and school district. Police officers searched Laura's neighborhood, asking residents questions and keeping a close eye on the area between Howard and Montgomery County. Laura's father, Mark, made a public plea for anyone with information to come forward and help find his daughter. He wanted Laura to know they were doing everything they could to find her and they weren't going to give up. Losing a child is one of the most difficult experiences a parent can face, and Mark wanted his daughter to know that they were working hard to bring her home safely. On the evening of September 7, 2017, an employee at the Jersey Gated Complex in Columbia, Maryland, found a new clue. While rummaging through a dumpster, he found Laura's license inside a cell phone. When police arrived, they also found Laura's vehicle parked at the complex. What puzzled them was that the complex was located just across the highway from Wild Lake High School, where Laura worked. This raised questions about why Laura would have parked her car there. Police took the evidence they collected to the lab for further testing. They also looked deeper into Laura's past and spoke to people close to her. To cover more ground, the investigation team divided into two groups. One group focused on tracking Laura's online activities, while the other group interviewed her family members and her boyfriend. To gather evidence, the police searched Laura's computer and cell phone. They also thoroughly searched her car for any clues that might point to her disappearance. In addition, they carefully reviewed her financial transactions and cell phone records. As part of their inquiry, the police also spoke with Laura's parents and sister about her disappearance. Laura's father, Mark, told them that the family had planned a weekend trip together, but Laura decided to stay behind to spend time with her boyfriend, Tyler. This was confirmed by her sister, Jennifer, who told police that Laura was expecting Tyler to propose to her during their time together. Police also obtained a text message conversation between Jennifer and Laura from the same weekend. Jennifer received messages from Laura stating that she and Tyler had plans for a countryside adventure on Saturday, September 2, 2017. Mark mentioned that Tyler had expressed his intention to marry Laura after learning of her pregnancy. However, on Monday morning, September 4, 2017, Laura sent Jennifer a concerning text message claiming the baby was not Tyler's, but rather her ex-boyfriend Antoine's. Jennifer found this suspicious, as Laura hadn't seen Antoine in over 2 years. She also noted that Laura had misspelled Antoine's name. When Jennifer tried to contact Laura, she received no response. Upon returning home on Monday evening, the family discovered that Laura was missing, leaving behind burning candles and her pet dog locked inside. The family suggested questioning Tyler, as he was the last person to see Laura. Tyler spoke with police and shared details of his weekend with Laura. He explained that he took her to Damascus, Maryland, to view a property he was interested in buying as a home for their future family. Laura seems excited about the idea of starting a family in the countryside. However, when they returned to Olney the following day, Sunday, September 3, 2017, the atmosphere had changed. According to Tyler, Laura was not as happy as she had been the day before. He revealed that they had an argument in Damascus, but he declined to elaborate on the disagreement. Tyler told police that when they returned to Laura's house, she asked him to return his set of keys. He agreed, not wanting to upset her further due to her pregnancy. They had planned to meet at the Columbia Mall on the morning of Monday, September 4, 2017, for breakfast and to discuss their issues, but Laura did not show up. When Tyler visited her house, there was no sign of her. Tyler initially told the police that he was unable to enter Laura's home because he didn't have a key. However, this statement was false. The neighbors reported seeing Tyler walking Laura's dog on Monday, September 4, at 2:30 p.m., which directly contradicted Tyler's claim. This raised a question for the police. If Tyler didn't have a key, how was he able to enter the home to take the dog for a walk? As police dug deeper, their suspicions about Tyler grew. They asked for and received permission to review his phone records. They also secretly placed a tracking device on his vehicle to monitor his movements. During this time, the police continued to search for Laura, fearing the worst but they hoping for the best and that she would return safely. The investigation uncovered some crucial information. A debit card transaction on September 2, 2017, revealed that Laura had made a purchase at a Safeway store. Surveillance footage confirmed that Tyler and Laura were together that evening. Analysis of their phone records showed that both their phones were in the same locations from that Saturday evening, but on Sunday, Laura's phone suddenly stopped moving. This finding, combined with the tracking device revealing Tyler's frequent visits to a field in Damascus, continues to imply Tyler is involved in Laura's disappearance. Tyler's phone records showed that he had texted a friend on Sunday evening, asking for a ride to help clean up a mess, but the friend declined. Further investigation revealed that both Tyler's and Laura's fingerprints were found on her vehicle, cell phone, and license, which were discovered in a dumpster in Columbia. This new evidence led police to bring Tyler in for additional questioning. Police asked Tyler about his involvement with Laura's cell phone and the presence of his fingerprints on her belongings. They also inquired about the cryptic message he had sent to his friend. In response, Tyler changed his story. He claimed that Laura was in trouble because she was pregnant by someone else, not him. He alleged that Laura had an affair with a student, which resulted in her pregnancy. Tyler's statement to the police was startling. He explained that he had taken Laura's car, license, and phone, and discarded them at the complex, an attempt to give her a head start to escape her problems before her family found out. His intention, he claimed, was to buy her some time to sort out her issues. He acknowledged trying to mislead everyone, including the police, in order to protect her because he cared about her. However, when police asked Tyler about Laura's current location, he denied knowing where she is now. But the police were not convinced by his story. Unbeknownst to Tyler, investigators had already discovered other messages on his phone, which painted a different picture of his relationship with Laura. A closer look at his phone revealed, they discover that Tyler has been texting with other women. It turns out Laura isn't his only girlfriend. As the police dug deeper, they discovered that Tyler and Laura had a troubled 10-year relationship. This new information was sparked from Laura's father, Mark, who had always felt uneasy about Tyler. According to Mark, Tyler had never made an effort to be with Laura on important occasions, such as holidays and birthdays, which made him question Tyler's commitment to his daughter. What's more, Mark knew that Tyler was also dating another woman, Christina Wagner, who was a teacher like Laura. Further investigation led the police to friends of both Tyler and Christina. They revealed that Tyler had been leading a double life. It turned out that Tyler had met Christina in 2012 and had been living with her while still in a relationship with Laura. Friends of they told police that Christina and Tyler had gotten engaged and were planning to get married in 2018. When asked about Laura, Tyler's friends claimed that she had become aggressive and that Tyler was trying to distance himself from her. Police found text messages on Laura's phone that showed she had tried to contact Christina on August 28, 2017. In the messages, Laura expressed her desire to meet Christina to talk about Tyler. Friends claimed Christina was angry at Laura's bold actions and Christina confronted Tyler about it. Christina decided to file a police complaint. However, when police told Christina, Laura, and Tyler would have to go to court to get a restraining order, Tyler changed his mind and withdrew. Investigation revealed that Christina and Tyler had planned to spend the Labor Day weekend shopping for their wedding, but Tyler couldn't make it due to a knee injury. When police told Laura's family about Christina, they shared with officers what Laura had confided in them, that Tyler was being stalked by Christina. This new information made it more likely that Tyler could be a suspect in Laura's disappearance. Police brought Tyler in for questioning again, this time confronting him about Christina. Initially, he denied any involvement with her, but police were able to challenge his claim with evidence of his secret life. Eventually, Tyler admitted to cheating on both women, which had led to his fight with Laura. When investigators spoke with Tyler, he expressed his desire to mend his relationship with Laura. However, when asked about Laura's disappearance, he maintained that he was not involved. Unbeknownst to Tyler, the police discovered a connection between him and a vacant field in Damascus through his phone records. They found a link to a meat processing plant called KS Cuts, which was adjacent to the property that Tyler had visited with Laura. The plant's owner also owned the field they had visited. Interviews with the owner revealed that Tyler had previously worked for him and often helped him hunt on the property. Further questioning led to a disturbing discovery. Over the Labor Day weekend, Tyler had requested access to the safe on the owner's property, which contained .420 caliber rifles with ammunition. This new information led police to suspect that Laura may have been killed, but they could not confront Tyler yet. They still needed to find Laura and gather evidence to prove their suspicions correct. Laura's family, along with the police, devised a plan to try to get Tyler to reveal Laura's location. On September 11, 2017, Tyler joined Laura's parents, Mark and Gwen, at a press conference to appeal for Laura's safe return. However, this plan was set up as a trap. The police and Laura's family were hoping Tyler would make a mistake and reveal information about Laura's whereabouts. Meanwhile, police officers and cadaver dogs searched the fields near the meat processing plant in Damascus. During the press conference, Tyler made an emotional appeal for Laura's safe return. In his speech, he hinted that Laura shouldn't be ashamed of anything she'd done wrong. Tyler's speech included the following words: "Laura, if you're listening, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what trouble you're in. We're going to fix it together, you, me, and your family. There are so many people who miss you, who are looking for you, and who are praying for your safety. We don't sleep or eat, we just pray that you're safe. I ask you to let us know that you're safe." Tyler claimed to be worried about Laura's disappearance, but what he didn't know was that he was the main suspect in the case. At the time, he seemed genuinely concerned, saying he was doing everything he could to find Laura and praying for her safe return. However, the situation took a devastating turn on September 13, 2017, just 2 days after the press conference. A secluded area of a field was identified as the location of Laura Wallen's body after K-9 dogs detected something suspicious. Upon further investigation, detectives discovered a freshly dug grave and recovered Laura's body at 5:30 p.m. The police were able to identify the body by matching the clothes Laura was wearing to a picture Jennifer had shown them from her last conversation with Laura. The discovery marked a tragic end to the desperate search for Laura. Laura Wallen, a highly respected teacher at Wild Lake High School and recent Teacher of the Year, tragically passed. The incident occurred around noon. Unfortunately, her unborn child also did not survive. The same day, Tyler Tessier, Laura's boyfriend, was arrested and charged with her murder. Tyler held at the county jail while investigators awaited the initial autopsy report. The report confirmed that Laura had been shot in the back of the head before being buried in the field. When Tyler was confronted with evidence, he created a false story. He claimed that on Sunday evening, he and Laura were at her house when a group of African American men burst in, took them hostage at gunpoint, and drove them to Damascus. According to Tyler, the men spared his life but shot Laura in the head, forcing him to bury her in a field. They threatened to harm him if he revealed their identities or led the police to Laura's body. However, police did not believe this story because they knew the relationship between Tyler and the property owner. Tyler then changed his story, claiming that he and Laura had an argument, which ended with him pushing her, causing her to fall, hit her head. He assumed she had died and buried her in the field to hide her body. Later, Tyler claimed that he had reconsidered and thought Laura might still be alive. To end her suffering, he dug up the grave, shot her in the head, and covered his tracks. He described this as a mercy killing. Tyler was held without bail at the Montgomery County Detention Center. Laura and her unborn son, baby Reed, were laid to rest in a public cemetery on September 30, 2017. Over 1,000 people, including Laura's family, friends, and students, attended the funeral to pay their respects to the beloved teacher. The prosecution, led by Montgomery County State Attorney John McCarthy, was building its case against Tyler. As they investigated, they developed a theory about Tyler's double life. They believed that Tyler was willing to continue living a secret life until Laura discovered his relationship with Christina. Fearing his deception would be exposed, Tyler began planning to kill Laura so he could continue his life with Christina. Tyler saw Labor Day weekend as the perfect opportunity to carry out his plan. With Christina out of town and Laura's family away, no one would be able to ask him about Laura's whereabouts until the weekend was over, giving him time to come up with an alibi. He chose a location he was familiar with, where he knew he could access the necessary equipment through a friend. The area was also isolated, making it unlikely that anyone would think to look for Laura there. Tyler fabricated a story about Laura's infidelity to throw her family and investigators off his trail. He deliberately left her car and belongings near her workplace, tried to create false evidence that she had run away because of a scandalous affair. However, Tyler made critical mistakes, constantly changing his alibi, which raised suspicions among the police from the start. Moreover, Tyler underestimated Laura's family, who had noticed that his relationship with Laura was unusual from the beginning. They felt that he never had the responsibility to her as a real-life partner. The prosecution had built a strong case against Tyler, presenting a convincing argument. However, Maryland law only allowed Tyler to be charged with Laura's murder. The death of her unborn child was not considered a separate crime under Maryland law, and this decision would be disputed during Tyler's trial in September 2018. On September 6, 2018, the pursuit of justice for Laura Wallen and her unborn son, baby Reed, came to an abrupt end. Tyler Tessier, the individual responsible for their deaths, was found hanging in his jail cell around 5 a.m. He had been allowed to shower and have breakfast before taking his own life. The news was a devastating blow to Laura's family, who had been seeking justice for their loved ones. They remembered Laura as a bright and loving person. According to reports, Tyler had written 5 letters indicating that he had planned to take his own life for some time. Laura's family did not get to see Tyler brought to justice. Laura's mother, Gwen, described Tyler as a diabolical human and expressed relief that her family no longer had to worry about him being a part of their society. The case of Laura's murder is a tragedy that will leave many people questioning the nature of evil. It's heartbreaking that Laura and her unborn child were killed by the man she loved and trusted, who had promised her a happy future together. This case serves as a reminder that sometimes, the people we trust the most can be the ones who harm us the most. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Daniel Wozniak. Sam Herr was born to parents Stephen and Raquel Kalberman on May 29, 1983, in Los Angeles, California. As their only child, Sam Herr was showered with love and attention from his parents, his father being a special education teacher and his mother a stay-at-home parent. Sam Herr maintained a close relationship with his parents even after he moved away. Despite his physically imposing stature, Sam Herr's friends affectionately referred to him as a gentle giant, describing him as a fun-loving and laid-back individual. Sam Herr enlisted in the United States Army at a young age and completed tours of duty in Afghanistan and Germany as part of the 173rd Airborne. After serving for 3 years, he was honorably discharged and returned to Southern California to pursue higher education using the GI Bill. His goal was to complete college and then re-enlist in the Army as an officer. To achieve this, Sam enrolled in Orange Coast Community College, where he befriended Julie Kibushi, who was 3 years his junior. However, Sam Herr struggled with the emotional aftermath of his military service, ultimately developing post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, a common affliction among veterans. When 28-year-old Sam Herr failed to visit his parents' house over a weekend as planned, they began to worry. Sam Herr's parents, Stephen and Raquel, became increasingly concerned after several attempts to contact their son went unanswered. Deciding to take matters into their own hands, Stephen went to Sam Herr's apartment in Costa Mesa with his wife to see what was amiss. Their discovery led to immediate panic when they could not find their son and only saw Julie Kibushi in a state of horror. Stephen quickly dialed 911 as Raquel choked and screamed. The moment they realized Julie had met a gruesome end, they knew their lives would never be the same, and the trauma would have a lasting impact. The Costa Mesa community was shocked by the incident, as murders are rare there. At the apartment, police found no signs of a disturbance. The bedroom, however, presented a disturbing scene. On the bedside table, investigators found an unused knife, as well as 2 books, a combat manual and a sex guide. But it was the condition of the bed that was truly horrifying. The bed was soaked in the Julie Kibushi's blood, and the deceased Julie Kibushi was found in a compromising position, partially lying on the bed and partially kneeling on the floor. Her pants had been pulled down, exposing her lower body, leading detectives to suspect that she may have been sexually assaulted before her murder. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head, with 1 bullet entering the top center of her skull. Although a knife was found on the bedside table, it appeared to have been unused. Other unusual details included a tiara on the victim's head and the words, "All yours," scrawled on the back of Julie Kibushi's sweater. Julie Kibushi's handbag was found in the kitchen. The detectives identified the victim as 23-year-old Julie Kibushi, who was born on Valentine's Day in 1987 to a Japanese-American family. She was the first daughter and third of 4 children to parents June and Masa Kibushi. Her parents affectionately called her "my Valentine girl" from a young age. Julie Kibushi developed a passion for tap dancing at the age of 5, which continued to grow throughout her life. Those who knew her described her as a joyful person to be around, with a goofy and bubbly personality that could light up a room. Julie Kibushi was known for her kindness and willingness to go out of her way to help others. Julie Kibushi's life was a balance between her Japanese heritage and her independent American spirit. She had recently graduated from the Orange County School of the Arts and was pursuing a degree in fashion design at Orange Coast Community College. There, she befriended 26-year-old Sam Herr and even tutored him in anthropology. Little did she know, her kindness would ultimately lead to her tragic demise. The police investigation into Julie Kibushi's murder was underway. Detectives meticulously examined the crime scene, searching for clues that would reveal the truth about her final moments. Their attention turned to Sam Herr, as Julie Kibushi's body was found in his apartment. His sudden disappearance further raised suspicions. With evidence pointing to Sam Herr's involvement, investigators decided to take a closer look at him. Detectives suspected that Manger had committed the crime in a moment of passion and then fled. This theory was supported by the fact that Manger was nowhere to be found after the murder of Julie Kibushi in his apartment. The discovery of text messages from Manger's number on Julie Kibushi's phone further fueled their suspicions. Initially, the messages seemed innocuous, with Manger sending Julie Kibushi a text at 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, telling her he would help a friend and then visit his parents. However, just 2 hours later, his messages took a drastic turn, as he frantically asked Julie Kibushi to come to his apartment. However, investigators interpreted these messages as evidence of Manger's guilt, arguing that he had planned for Julie Kibushi to visit his apartment, which ultimately led to the murder. The disappearance of several key items from the apartment hinted at Manger's possible flight. His passport and car were both missing, leading investigators to a straightforward conclusion: Manger was on the run and likely the prime suspect in the crime. As the investigation continued, the Costa Mesa police tracked Manger's cell phone and credit card activity to pinpoint his location. They discovered that his credit card had been used for 4 ATM withdrawals and a purchase at a pizza delivery place in Long Beach, California, just 20 miles from Sam's home. Police anticipated that Manger would appear in the surveillance footage of the ATM. However, when the bank provided the footage, the police were shocked to see a teenager wearing a hoodie, not Manger, withdrawing money from his account. Neither the police nor Manger's parents could identify the mysterious boy. Investigators believed he was probably helping Manger escape or hide. In either case, the Costa Mesa police were determined to find him. On May 26, 2010, they discovered that his credit card had been used for another pizza delivery, and they began tracing the delivery driver. Police went to an address provided by a tipster, expecting to catch Manger, but instead found 17-year-old Wesley Freilich and his friends. Although initially suspected, authorities quickly cleared Wesley's name. However, they discovered that he possessed Manger's credit card. Wesley told investigators a surprising story. He had been given the credit card by Daniel Wozniak, a local theater actor who had met Wesley through community theater. Daniel Wozniak claimed to be a bail bondsman and said he needed help collecting money from Manger. Believing Wozniak's story, Wesley agreed to withdraw cash using the credit card, unaware of the true circumstances. A total of $1,900 was withdrawn from the account, sparking further investigation. The name Daniel Wozniak was familiar to investigators, who had previously found an invitation to his upcoming wedding in Manger's apartment. This raised several questions: who was Daniel Wozniak, and what was his connection to Manger? Was he involved in helping Manger escape, or was he a more sinister accomplice to the murder? These questions needed to be answered. To understand Daniel Wozniak's potential role, investigators looked into his background. Born on March 23, 1984, Daniel Wozniak was the youngest of 3 brothers. Due to his parents' demanding work schedules, he spent a significant amount of time with his grandparents after school. Daniel Wozniak grew up in a privileged household and was accustomed to luxury. Daniel Wozniak's journey to becoming an actor began in his early 20s. Despite struggling to hold down a job and often having to move to low-paying positions, his passion for acting and singing in musicals kept him going. It was during this time that he met his future wife, a fellow actress, and they eventually got married. However, their happiness was short-lived. On May 26, 2010, the day of Daniel Wozniak's bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California, police arrived with an arrest warrant. This unexpected turn of events linked Daniel Wozniak to the murder of Julie Kibushi, as it turned out that Manger, the suspected killer, lived in the same apartment complex as Daniel Wozniak. Authorities believed that Daniel Wozniak may have helped Manger escape or hide, leading them to assume he was involved in the crime. Police arrested and questioned Daniel Wozniak. Initially, during interrogation, Daniel Wozniak claimed that his only wrongdoing was credit card fraud and that he had covered for his friend Sam Her. He explained to investigators that he, Sam Her, and Wesley had planned to withdraw all of his money from the bank and then report the credit cards as stolen. Daniel Wozniak claims he dropped Sam Her off at a local mall. Detectives remained skeptical, however, believing that Daniel Wozniak was still protecting Sam Her and had more to do with Julie Kibushi's murder than he had let on. In an effort to uncover the truth, police asked Wozniak to provide a DNA sample, a request that made him nervous. Detectives noticed Daniel Wozniak's nervous behavior when questioned about his DNA being found at Sam Her's apartment, despite his attempts to act nonchalant. As the pressure mounted, he began to alter his story repeatedly. Eventually, Daniel Wozniak cracked and admitted he knew about Julie Kibushi's murder and had helped the perpetrator escape. However, when reminded that his DNA had been collected, he insisted it would not match any evidence found on Julie Kibushi's body, clinging to the claim of his innocence. Just as detectives were expecting Daniel Wozniak to reveal more information, he abruptly ended the interview. The detectives, determined to uncover the truth, informed Daniel Wozniak that he would be arrested as an accessory to murder if he didn't provide a full account of his involvement. Daniel Wozniak, who was scheduled to get married in just 48 hours, was caught between revealing the truth and avoiding arrest, which would ruin his wedding plans. Under intense questioning, Daniel Wozniak's story began to unravel. Detectives sensed his weakness and accelerated the process by falsely claiming that DNA evidence linked him to Julie Kibushi's body. They misled him, as DNA test results would not be available for weeks. Instead of disputing the claim, Daniel Wozniak surprisingly explained that his DNA would be on Julie Kibushi's body because he was near her. This inconsistent response raised suspicions. As Daniel Wozniak's lies continued to crumble, he made a stunning revelation, which was particularly alarming to detectives because they had initially observed only one gunshot wound at the crime scene. It wasn't until the autopsy was performed that a second gunshot wound was discovered, casting further doubt on Daniel Wozniak's credibility. Daniel Wozniak's confession implicated him as an accomplice to the murder, allowing investigators to formally detain him. However, detectives still needed to locate Sam Her, and Daniel Wozniak refused to cooperate. Despite being in custody, Daniel Wozniak made a phone call to his fiancée, Rachel Buffett. Unbeknownst to Daniel Wozniak, the conversation was being recorded, which would eventually ensnare him in his own deceit. Rachel decided to prioritize her freedom over her relationship and informed Daniel Wozniak that she would share more information with the detectives. Realizing he needed to act swiftly, Daniel Wozniak became frantic and sought to negotiate a deal with the detectives, a reversal of his stance just hours earlier. Daniel Wozniak revealed a shocking account to the detectives, detailing his sinister murder plan. It began with a seemingly innocuous request to a friend, Sam Her, whom he considered trustworthy. On May 21, 2010, Daniel Wozniak asked Sam Her to help him move boxes at the Los Alamitos Theater attic, located on a local military base. Sam Her was initially unaware of what had happened. When he realized he had been shot, he begged Daniel Wozniak for help. However, Daniel Wozniak showed no mercy. Without hesitation, he reloaded the gun and shot Sam Her a second time, killing him instantly. The suspect brutally murdered Sam Her and didn't stop there. He then used Sam Her's phone to text Julie Kibushi, luring her to Sam Her's apartment. He left Sam Her's body in the attic later that night. The suspect snuck into Sam Her's apartment, where Julie Kibushi had fallen into his trap. He then shot Julie Kibushi twice in the head. Daniel Wozniak altered the crime scene to make people think Sam Her was the culprit, and he fled after attacking and killing Julie Kibushi. However, Daniel Wozniak realized that he still had to hide Sam Her's body, Daniel Wozniak went back to the attic and cut off Sam Hare's hands and head to make it harder to identify the body. He then got rid of these body parts in a nearby park. Despite his gruesome actions, Daniel Wozniak appeared to be unaffected and returned to the theater, where he was seen laughing and joking with others in several photos taken at cast parties, which were later found by detectives. The underlying motive for the murders was surprisingly straightforward: money. Daniel Wozniak's financial struggles were well documented, with 2 months of unpaid rent threatening his eviction and no means to fund the lavish wedding and honeymoon he had planned. However, his situation changed dramatically when he discovered that Sam Hare had $62,000 in savings from his military service. This revelation sparked a sinister plan, and Daniel Wozniak brutally murdered 2 innocent people in cold blood, all to fund his own extravagant celebrations. The bag containing crucial evidence against Daniel Wozniak was meant to be disposed of by his brother Tim, but Tim threw it over their parents' fence instead. The bag held incriminating items like bloody clothing, a weapon, and victim Sam Hare's records and passport, all with Daniel's DNA. This treasure trove of evidence helped secure a quick conviction, with Daniel found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder on December 16, 2015. On January 11, 2016, the jury in Daniel Wozniak's trial recommended the death penalty after only 1 hour of deliberation, a remarkably short time for such a serious decision. The judge later sentenced Daniel Wozniak to death on September 23, 2016. Years after the trial, detectives discovered that Rachel Buffett, Daniel Wozniak's former fiancée, had been aware of the murder plots and had misled investigators. Despite her denials, Rachel Buffett was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of accessory after the fact for allegedly lying to the police on multiple occasions. On September 12, 2018, Rachel Buffett was found guilty of 2 serious charges, which carried a maximum sentence of 44 months in prison. As a result, she received a 32-month prison sentence on November 8, 2018. She was eventually released in 2019. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Michelle Anglin. Michelle Anglin was born on November 27, 1973, in Fountain Valley, California. Later, her family moved to Arizona, where she was raised by her mother, Peggy, and stepfather, Larry McCall. Michelle had 2 older sisters, Cindy and Christina. When Michelle was around 20 years old, she started dating Hudson England, and their relationship blossomed. They made each other happy, and when Hudson proposed, Michelle accepted without hesitation. In late 1995, they got married in a joyous ceremony surrounded by their families and friends. Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, was also a realtor. According to Michelle's mother, it was she who inspired Michelle to enter the real estate industry. Michelle's family would regularly keep in touch with her via her work phone when she was in the office. When showing houses to clients, Michelle always carried a pager, allowing her loved ones to reach her if needed. However, on February 9, 1996, Michelle did not respond to calls and messages from her family. She would usually inform someone about her plans to show a house to a potential buyer. The job of a realtor can be fraught with risk, often exceeding that of other professions. This is due in part to the nature of their work, which often involves working alone and visiting isolated locations to show properties. Predators often target realtors, luring them to empty homes with false intentions, such as feigning interest in buying a house. Once the realtor is alone and vulnerable, the predator can take advantage of the situation. Concern for this inherent danger led Michelle's family to become worried when they couldn't contact her during the day. Michelle's sister Cindy sought assistance from her boyfriend, a member of the Phoenix Police, who offered to perform a welfare check on Michelle. When he visited her workplace, he discovered Michelle's parked car, which seemed undisturbed. When Cindy's boyfriend entered the office, he found the lights on and music playing. However, a closer look revealed that Michelle's personal belongings, including her purse and pager, were still on a table in the unlocked office. This raised questions about why she had left in such a hurry, abandoning her belongings behind. That evening, Michelle's family filed a missing persons report with the police. Earlier that day, Michelle had an appointment with a potential buyer to show them 3 houses near her office. Since the houses were close to her office, she decided not to use her car. When the police arrived, they inspected Michelle's office and then visited the 3 houses she might have shown the buyer. During their initial search, they found 3 pink buttons in the master closet on the 2nd floor of one of the houses. They also noticed that 2 candles in the master bathroom had been knocked over, one into each sink, but everything else seemed undisturbed. Cindy's boyfriend asked her about Michelle's outfit, as police found buttons they suspected belonged to her. Cindy couldn't recall. A search of the houses, especially where the buttons were found, led to a tragic discovery that Michelle's body under the master bed. Investigation revealed seminal fluid, broken candlesticks, Michelle's clothes, and paint and plaster chips under the bed and in the bathroom. The forensic examination found no evidence of forced intimate contact before Michelle's death. However, it suggested the perpetrator intended to do so, undressing Michelle despite her resistance. Bruises on her neck indicated she was strangled while fighting back. The violent confrontation occurred in the master closet and bath, as shown by scattered buttons, seminal fluid, damaged candles, and broken ceramic chips. During the attack, Michelle's clothing was torn off, as evident by her tattered and interwoven clothes. Her body showed multiple signs of the intense struggle, numerous bruises and abrasions on her body, defensive wounds on her hands and wrists. Michelle's desperate fight to defend herself against her assailant ultimately proved futile. After her daughter's death, Peggy spoke out about the safety concerns facing women who work alone, including real estate agents in model homes and open houses. As a result of her vocal advocacy, Peggy claims to have been fired from her job. The police's first lead in the investigation was Michelle's husband, Hudson England. It's standard procedure for law enforcement to initially investigate family members to determine if they were involved in the crime. Michelle's family, however, did not suspect Hudson, as they were a happy couple who had married just 4 months prior to her death. Nevertheless, the investigators decided to look into Hudson's alibi. When questioned by the police, Hudson appeared genuinely distraught over Michelle's death. He claimed to have spent the day visiting several car dealerships in search of a family vehicle, as they were planning to start a family. The police verified his alibi and found it to be true, ultimately ruling him out as a suspect. During the investigation, he stated that he had no idea who would want to harm Michelle and speculated that she was likely attacked by someone she was showing a house to. To further investigate, the police reviewed Michelle's phone records and discovered that on February 9th, between 3:45 and 4:15 p.m., she was on a call with a fellow sales agent. Michelle abruptly ended the call, stating that a potential buyer had arrived at the subdivision. The fellow agent attempted to call Michelle back between 4:30 and 5 p.m., but the calls went unanswered. This information allowed detectives to narrow down the time frame of the attack, but they still needed to identify the person Michelle was supposed to meet. Unfortunately, Michelle had not mentioned the potential buyer's name during the phone conversation, nor had she written it in her work notes, leaving the police without any immediate leads on the identity of the mysterious individual. The police investigation into the attack on Michelle involved interviewing people who lived in the area where the incident occurred. One resident, who happened to be returning home from work between 4 o'clock and 4:45 p.m. on February 9th, reported seeing a white man coming down the steps of one of the 3 houses for sale in the neighborhood. This witness also noticed a black, full-sized, older model Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked in the lot of the house. Additionally, Several potential buyers who visited the subdivision that day between 4 o'clock and 4:30 p.m. reported seeing a man walking from the direction of the second and third model homes. They also observed that candlesticks in the master bathroom of the third model home had been knocked over into the sinks. Kim Ramos, a young real estate sales associate from a nearby subdivision, contacted the police after hearing the news. She reported that on February 9th, the same day Michelle's body was found at around 2 p.m., she had met with a potential buyer who drove an old black Chevrolet pickup truck. Kim found it suspicious that he was interested in a $500,000 house, but drove a vehicle that suggested a more modest lifestyle. When Kim accompanied he to a 2-story house, supposedly to answer his questions, she became uneasy. He stood too close to her and casually touched her hand several times, making her wary. After spending only a brief time with him, Kim returned to the sales office, feeling that his questions about the house, such as the type of flooring and the possibility of adding a 4th bedroom, seemed unnecessary and even foolish. Ms. Ramos played a crucial role in the investigation by asking the suspicious client to fill out a guest registration card, which he reluctantly completed. The client, who claimed to be James Adams, provided his real home address and phone number. When police visited the address, they spotted a black Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked outside. The truck was registered to 32-year-old James Van Adams, who was not at home at the time. Police took photos of the truck and showed them to Kim, who confirmed that it was the same vehicle driven by the suspicious client she had met just hours before Michelle's death. Further investigation into James Van Adams' background revealed that Adams was a 32-year-old man who was currently separated from his wife and had a child. He had a prior conviction in California for a crime committed in 1990. In that case, Adams had targeted Melissa Cunningham, a petite sales agent who was working alone at an apartment complex. He had asked her to show him model homes that were still under construction, specifically expressing interest in a 2-story home with a master bedroom and bathroom upstairs. This event further increased suspicions about Adams. Investigating Michelle England's death led detectives to quickly uncover a previous failed attack by James Adams. They obtained a search and arrest warrant, returned to Adams' home, and took him in for questioning. However, Adams refused to cooperate, appeared nervous, and had noticeable injuries on his face, including under his eye. The detective suspected that these injuries might have been sustained when Michelle defended herself with the missing candlesticks, which were later found. As a result, they collected DNA, blood, and hair samples from Adams. A witness, Kim Ramos, identified him and reported that he had no visible injuries on his face during their meeting. Adams claimed his injuries came from working on his pickup truck, but work records showed he left early on February 9th and didn't return, citing car troubles. When seen next, he had a new facial injury and black eye, which his employer and coworker said weren't there before. The police analysis of Adams' DNA, blood, and hair samples is detailed in court documents, which also reference a sample of seminal fluid found on the carpet in the closet. The Phoenix Crime Lab and DPS Lab conducted DNA testing on a carpet sample. Initially, results excluded James Van Adams, but retesting by the crime lab and further testing included him as a contributor. Despite the police taking extensive fingerprint and footprint evidence from the model home, none of the prints matched Adams. Adams was charged with the murder of Michelle England and denied any involvement in the crime. His trial began on July 1, 1997. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence that they claimed linked Adams to Michelle's death. One key witness was Kim Ramos, who believed she had narrowly escaped being attacked by Adams herself. Ramos testified that Adams had shown suspicious behavior, including wearing casual clothing, driving an old vehicle, and asking unusual questions about the house's flooring and 4th bedroom. Prosecutors also presented evidence of Adams' interactions with other sales agents in California and Briarwood, which they claimed showed a pattern of suspicious behavior. Susan Wright, an employee, met with Adams multiple times. Their first meeting was in September or October 1995, when Adams asked Wright to show him a house. Wright recalled Adams standing too close and not asking questions about the house. On November 5, 1995, James Van Adams visited Susan's office again, signing in as Jim Adams. This was not an incident, as Adams had repeatedly visited her office and called her, asking her out on dates. A pattern of behavior emerged, revealing Adams' deliberate plan of action. Adams targeted women with similar characteristics, attacking them in California in 1990. Victims Michelle, Susan Wright, Kim Ramos, and Melissa Cunningham worked alone in shared physical traits. Attacks occurred in the afternoon, with Adams often asking victims to accompany him upstairs in a two-story house. He used a similar method, putting his right arm around their necks, ripping off their clothes, and attempting to assault them. The trial was a challenging experience for Michelle's family, who were present throughout the proceedings. The judge had to invite Michelle's mother to go out from the courtroom because she was overcome with emotion and yelled at Adams. However, Adams appeared to take pleasure in the family's distress, occasionally flashing a grin. Nevertheless, his demeanor changed when the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts on July 14, 1997, and he was subsequently sentenced to death. Following the sentencing, Adams launched a series of appeals, claiming he was innocent. In his appeal, he argued that a previous incident in California in 1990, in which Melissa Cunningham escaped, supported his claim that he did not intentionally try to kill Michelle. Adams alleged that during the California attack, he had simply restrained his victim by the neck in an attempt to make intimate contact. He insisted that this incident demonstrated that he did not plan to kill Michelle, and the jury should have considered this when reaching their verdict. James Van Adams' attempts to appeal his death sentence were denied, and on March 14, 2005, he took his own life while in prison. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was asphyxia, consistent with suicide. The news of his death brought relief to the family of Michelle. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sarah Pappenheim. Sarah Pappenheim was born on January 30, 1997, in Minnesota. She was the second child of Donnie Odegaard and Jerry Pappenheim, with an older brother named Josh. The siblings developed a strong bond as they grew older. When Sarah was in second grade, her family relocated from Minneapolis to Redding, California. She graduated from Foothill High School in 2015, where she was an active member of the school band and played the drums. Sarah was passionate about music, especially drumming. She was a skilled drummer and regularly played at jam sessions in Redding. As one of the few female drummers, she stood out on stage. When Sarah was 18, she moved back to her hometown in Minnesota with her mother and brother after her parents got divorced. There, she continued to play drums at different venues and eventually met Bernard Allison, a famous blues guitarist and singer. Allison was impressed with her skills and invited her to join him on stage occasionally. By the time Sarah turned 19, she had become a local celebrity among blues fans, known for her bright smile, which earned her the nickname Ronald McDonald. Meanwhile, her brother Josh was struggling with depression and mental health issues after their parents' divorce. Tragically, on an ordinary day in February 2016, the police arrived at their doorstep and delivered devastating news to Sarah's mother. Josh took his own life at the age of 20, leaving his loved ones, especially his mother Sarah, heartbroken. The bond between Sarah and Josh was incredibly strong, and his passing devastated her. To cope with her loss and to help others who struggle with mental health, Sarah decided to study psychology. She had been in touch with Nico Carson Manger, who lived in the Netherlands, and she moved there to pursue her studies. At Erasmus University in Rotterdam, Sarah began her psychology program with Nico's support, who not only helped her navigate her grief but also assisted her with her studies as a native speaker. Sarah's passion for music never faded despite her focus on studies and work. She stayed in touch with Bernard Allison, a musician she had performed with, and shared her dream of buying a drum kit. In January 2017, Bernard's band toured Europe, and on Sarah's 20th birthday, January 30th, she attended Bernard's concert in Germany with Nico. Bernard spotted her in the audience, invited her on stage, and let her play the drums with them, just like old times. Sarah lived on the third floor of an apartment complex near the university in Rotterdam. As 2018 drew to a close, she planned to spend Christmas in the United States and booked a flight for a week before New Year's Eve. However, on December 12th, her life took a devastating turn. When a police officer appeared at her doorstep, just like in 2016 when her son had passed away, Sarah's legs began to shake. She instinctively knew what the officer was about to tell her, but couldn't bear the thought of losing another loved one. When the officer informed Sarah's mother that her daughter had passed away, she was overcome with grief and lost consciousness. This devastating news came just a year after the loss of her son, who had died at the age of 20. Sarah was only 21 years old. Sarah lived in a student complex on the third floor, where she rented an apartment with her roommate, Joel Schelling. Joel was also a musician, and music was the common interest that brought them together. Unlike Sarah, who was outgoing and always smiling, Joel was more reserved and had a temper. Despite their occasional quarrels, Sarah remained a supportive friend to Joel, often calming him down when he became angry. However, the situation took a turn for the worse over time. Just 6 days before her death, Sarah confided in her friend Adam Pryor that she was afraid of Joel, who had threatened to harm 3 people he disliked. Sarah knew she had to go to the police. Just a couple of days before her death, she had spoken to her mother on the phone about her concerns. Sarah's roommate, Joel, was behaving in a way that was increasingly bothering her. Her mother advised her to find a new place to live as soon as possible and to avoid Joel until she could move out. On December 12, 2018, at 12:20 p.m., the police received a call from Sarah and Joel's next-door neighbors, who reported hearing a loud fight and then Sarah screaming. When the police arrived, they found Sarah lying on the floor with multiple stab wounds. Despite attempts to revive her, Sarah died from her injuries. The police immediately began searching for Joel, who was nowhere to be found. Neighbors reported that he had left the apartment in a hurry, taking a large double bass with him. This distinctive instrument became a key detail in the police's description of Joel. Less than 2 hours after the crime, 23-year-old Joel Schelling was arrested at Eindhoven train station, about 60 miles from Rotterdam. He was on his way to visit his parents, who lived in Eindhoven. After Joel was arrested, he made a shocking confession to his mother while on the train. He told her that he had taken Sarah's life. The judge subsequently placed Joel under arrest for 14 days to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Meanwhile, forensic experts conducting the autopsy on Sarah's body found 27 stab wounds, with several of them on her neck, abdomen, and back. 2 days after Sarah passed away, her mother, Donnie Odegaard, traveled to the Netherlands to arrange for her daughter's body to be returned home. However, this required raising $40,000, a task that was made possible by the generosity of strangers who cared for the family. Upon learning of Joel's arrest, Donnie Odegaard inquired if her daughter had contacted the police. Sarah had instead reached out to social workers, who visited Joel and found him calm. However, the next day, Sarah again contacted social services due to Joel's erratic behavior, including hitting himself with a hammer and threatening to harm multiple people. The case against Schelling began in March 2019. Schelling was accused of causing Sarah Pappenheim's death and admitted his guilt. However, he claimed he did not remember the actual act of taking her life. According to Schelling, he recalled fighting with Sarah, but his next memory was of being in the shower, cleaning himself. Sarah's mother, Doni Odegaard, attended each hearing, relying on an interpreter to understand the proceedings. During the trial, Schelling stated that he suffered from delirium and heard voices in his head. However, when asked if these voices had instructed him to fight with Sarah, Schelling said he did not know and could not recall. He also could not remember the cause of their fight. Prior to the verdict, experts testified that Schelling suffered from multiple disorders and required long-term treatment. Despite this, they concluded that Schelling was responsible for Sarah's death. The verdict was announced in December 2019. Sarah Pappenheim's death occurred before she could receive a response to her second request for support, after her initial request for assistance from social workers went unresponded due to the specialist's unavailability. The medics concluded that Schelling was aware of the initial fight and scuffle with Sarah, and had the opportunity to either stop the altercation or grab the knife. By choosing the latter, he should be held accountable for his actions. The prosecutor requested a 10-year prison sentence, but the judge in Rotterdam gave Schelling a 6-year prison term, followed by an indefinite sentence in a psychiatric hospital. The court reduced the sentence from 10 years due to Schelling's relatively young age and his significantly diminished mental capacity at the time of the crime. This means that the court did not consider Schelling fully responsible for his actions. When handing down the sentence, the court released a detailed explanation stating that, although the crime was severe and unpredictable, Schelling's serious psychological disorders made it likely that he would commit another violent crime. The court noted that Schelling suffers from chronic psychological disorders that require ongoing treatment in a clinical setting. The court viewed psychiatric detention as a punitive measure for Schelling, who has expressed a willingness to undergo treatment for depression and other disorders. The court has ruled that Schelling will remain in treatment until it determines he is well enough to be released. The court will review his status every 2 years. Additionally, Schelling has been ordered to pay €68,700 in compensation to Sarah's family. Doni Odegaard is outraged by the sentence, believing it is too lenient. She thinks Schelling should have received a minimum sentence of 10 years in prison. In her opinion, Schelling would have faced a much harsher sentence in the US, such as life imprisonment or the death penalty, which would have prevented him from committing a similar crime in the future. She is also concerned that Schelling may be eligible for parole in as little as 4 years and vowed to do everything in her power to keep him behind bars. An investigation was also conducted into the social workers who had interacted with Sarah. The investigation concluded that the social workers could not be held accountable for failing to identify Schelling's disorders because they did not possess the necessary expertise to make such a diagnosis. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christina Carlin Craft. Christina Rose Carlin Craft was born on November 11, 1983, in southern New Jersey, to Stuart Craft and Dawn Carlin. From a young age, she enjoyed being in front of the camera, whether it was being photographed or videotaped. After graduating from high school in Linwood in 2000, Christina worked as a waitress in southern New Jersey and later at the Borgata Hotel Casino and Spa in Atlantic City. Although she had a stable job, her true aspiration was to become a model. Christina's determination eventually paid off, and she achieved some success in the modeling industry. In her promotional materials, she expressed her love for posing in elegant lingerie and swimwear. According to Eva Waltz, a friend Christina met while working on a 3-day photo shoot for Maxim magazine, Christina was a charming and beautiful person with a great sense of humor. With her dark hair and blue eyes, she embodied the qualities of a fashion model. Christina's ultimate goal was to appear on the cover of Playboy. In 2003, while still working as a waitress at the Borgata Casino, Christina met Alex Caiatelli, and they soon began dating. Alex supports Christina's ambitions and never hindered her career. They got engaged after a long relationship. During this time, Christina became Cyber Girl of the Month in May 2009, earning an invitation to the Playboy Mansion, where she attended exclusive events and experienced luxury. At the height of her career, Christina's ambitions soared, particularly after meeting Hugh Hefner. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, she failed to secure a modeling contract with Playboy magazine, a highly competitive opportunity that only one girl among thousands of applicants can attain. Christina faced significant obstacles in becoming a top model at that time. One major issue was her age. At 26, she was considered too old for certain magazines that typically feature younger models. Despite this, she continued to work hard, landing jobs with prominent companies like Redken, Maxim, Victoria's Secret, and Vanity Fair. Determined to advance her career, Christina moved to New York with her boyfriend Alex. However, her decision to pose for Playboy proved to be a setback. Many brands were hesitant to work with her after the explicit photo shoot, and her career began to decline. Eventually, it came to a complete halt. It was a challenging time for Christina, but she was grateful to have Alex's support to help her through it. Christina was a woman known for both her physical beauty and her controversial behavior. In 2016, she caused a disturbance at the Smith, a New York restaurant. Following the incident, the New York Post published several articles about what had happened. According to law enforcement sources and court documents, Christina Carlin Craft, 34, was dining at the Smith with a male friend on March 6 when an argument broke out over the bill. The man refused to pay, and the manager, Sergei Anakin, intervened. Christina, who was reportedly intoxicated, claimed the manager had pushed her, but a video of the incident showed that was not true. During the altercation, Christina allegedly hit a police officer on the neck, causing redness and significant pain. She was subsequently charged with misdemeanor assault, attempted assault, and harassment. However, after the district attorney offered her a deal, the charges were dropped on the condition that she stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Christina's lawyer explained that she accepted a reasonable deal offered by the district attorney. Christina had always been fond of Philadelphia, particularly Ardmore, where she felt a strong sense of safety. Considering this, Alex purchased an apartment for her in Ardmore, and they of them relocated to Pennsylvania in 2018. However, Christina soon discovered that Ardmore did not live up to her expectations of being a safe haven. In fact, on August 18, 2018, she reported a robbery to the police. Christina spent the evening at a bar in Philadelphia, but her memories of the night are hazy. The next morning, she woke up with no recollection of how she got home or if anyone was with her. She suspected that someone had drugged her with illegal substances. Feeling scared, she confided in others about her concerns. Her partner, Alex, was away on a business trip at the time, which added to her anxiety. The police investigation into the incident uncovered CCTV footage that showed a car arriving at Christina's apartment building around 3 a.m. The footage revealed that Christina was unconscious in the back seat. The driver, who was later identified as the perpetrator, took Christina's keys from her purse and entered her apartment. Once inside, the thief stole over $50,000 worth of valuables, including jewelry, designer handbags, sunglasses, a credit card, and personal documents. The perpetrator spent about an hour and a half in Christina's apartment before returning to the car. He then helped Christina out of the vehicle and into her apartment building, leaving her in the hallway. The thief put the keys back in Christina's purse and drove away, leaving her disoriented and frightened. The police were able to identify the perpetrator of the robbery with the help of a credit card statement. The culprit was Andre Melton, a man with a prior criminal record. At the time of the robbery, Melton was driving a rented 2018 Kia Sorento with a Virginia license plate. Witnesses reported seeing the same car near Christina's house on August 17, a sighting confirmed by police using specialized license plate recognition software. As the police searched for Melton and worked to recover Christina's stolen belongings, a far more serious crime occurred. On August 22, 2018, Alex Cayatelli called the police to ask them to check on his girlfriend, Christina Carlin Craft, as he was unable to contact her. When he arrived home, he found the apartment door locked from the inside. A review of the security system revealed that someone had opened the front door and balcony door overnight. The police were forced to break down the front door to gain entry. Upon entering the apartment, they immediately discovered a crime scene, with a body on the bed covered in a blanket and blood visible. Christina Carlin Craft's brutally beaten body was discovered under a blanket. She had suffered severe injuries, including a broken nose and strangulation marks on her neck. When Christina's identity was confirmed, the news of her death was devastating to Alex. As the police investigated further, they couldn't rule out the possibility that Alex might be involved in her murder. After all, the closest people to the victim are often the prime suspects. Christina and Alex had a long history together, and anything could have happened between them. The fact that Alex had called the police to express his concern about Christina, only to have her body discovered shortly after, raised suspicions. It was possible that Alex had staged his concern to divert attention from himself. The detectives asked him to accompany them to the police station for questioning, and Alex agreed without hesitation. Alex told investigators he had to return to New York for urgent work on August 21st. On August 22nd, at 2:30 a.m., he called Christina to say goodnight, but she didn't answer. Since Christina was always awake at that hour, Alex grew concerned. He called her several more times, but got no response. He then checked the security system and found suspicious activity at the apartment that night. Alex decided to put his business on hold and return to Ardmore immediately. The police believed Alex's story and ruled him out as a suspect, as it was impossible for him to be in two places at once. His alibi checked out, and the police cleared him of any involvement in Christina's death. The main suspect in Christina's murder was initially Andre Melton, who had previously stolen valuables from her apartment. It's possible that he returned to the apartment to steal again, but his plan was foiled when Christina caught him. Alternatively, he may have discovered that she had reported him to the police and sought revenge. On August 22nd, the day Christina's body was discovered, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Andre Melton. When they went to his residence, they found some of Christina's belongings, but Melton was nowhere to be found. However, surveillance footage from the night of the crime revealed that Christina had returned to her apartment with an unknown man at 3:08 a.m., but it wasn't Andre Melton. Further analysis of the footage showed that the unknown man did not leave the apartment. To investigate further, police reviewed CCTV footage from the streets of Ardmore and discovered that Christina had visited a bar in Philadelphia before returning to her apartment. At the bar, investigators found footage of Christina meeting a man who later hugged her, the same man she had returned to her apartment with. Christina and a new acquaintance hailed a taxi after leaving the bar. Detectives tracked her movements to rebuild the timeline of events leading up to her death. They eliminated Melton as a suspect since he wasn't with her that day. They still had to determine if her death was connected to the earlier robbery or just a coincidence. On August 25th, the police got a new lead. Andrew Sanford, the taxi driver who drove Christina and her companion that night. He reported that Christina and her friend had approached him, and they didn't use the taxi app. After agreeing on a fare, they got into the taxi. According to Sanford, the couple seemed affectionate and friendly, so they didn't raise any suspicions. Sanford also remembered that when they arrived at their destination, Christina took the initiative to settle the fare. However, she didn't have any cash on her. She offered to leave her credit card, but Sanford refused. Then, Christina's friend offered him $100 if he would wait 10 to 15 minutes near the house while they went to the apartment. Sanford left 20 minutes later, as neither Christina nor her friend returned. Christina and the man entered their apartment around 3 a.m. At 4 a.m., Christina made a brief call to her cousin, but didn't speak a word. Her cousin, however, heard a man in the background instructing Christina not to call the police. The call ended abruptly, leaving the cousin unclear about what was happening. The police later determined the timeline of the crime using the apartment's door sensors, which recorded the exact times the doors were opened. The data showed that the first door opening occurred at 3:08 a.m. and the next at 5:10 a.m. Since the apartment was on the second floor, the investigators suspected that the perpetrator had left through the sliding glass door on the balcony, which was also detected by the security system around the same time. This explained why the surveillance cameras did not capture the moment when the man Christina met at the bar left the apartment. When the police arrived after Alex's call, they found Christina alone in the apartment. Based on this information, the police theorized that the perpetrator escaped by jumping off the balcony. The investigation's next step was to seek the public's help through the media. After releasing the surveillance camera images, the authorities asked anyone with information to come forward. The photos showed two individuals, Andre Melton and the second person who was at Christina's apartment on the night of her death. Surprisingly, Andre Melton called the police by himself, admitting to stealing from Christina but denying involvement in her murder. On August 26, the police station received an anonymous call from a man who claimed to know one of the suspects in the recent crime. The caller revealed that he had shared a room with the suspect at a psychiatric clinic in Philadelphia. According to the caller, the suspect had previously assaulted a woman in Love Park and molesting her. The suspect became aggressive, shouting and causing a disturbance, and was eventually hospitalized for 2 hours at a cost of $70. However, he was not identified. The caller provided more chilling information. The suspect had bragged about strangling a woman and felt proud and satisfied by the act. This new information convinced investigators that the suspect was likely responsible for the murder of Christina Carlincraft. The police received another call from a Philadelphia relative of the suspect, who identified the man in the photo as Jonathan Wesley Harris, a convicted felon with a history of robbery. Harris had been released from prison on July 15, just 5 weeks before Christina's murder. After studying the suspect's entire biography, it became clear that Andre Melton and Jonathan Harris had no prior connection and had never met. As a result, the police ruled out any link between their crimes. Additionally, the police gained access to Harris's phone messages. On August 22, he texted a friend that he had met an attractive woman and was going to her apartment. On August 28, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris. It was essential to apprehend him as soon as possible, as no one knew what he might do next. However, Harris had left no trail. When investigators contacted Harris's sister on August 29, 2018, she revealed that he had recently purchased a bus ticket to Pittsburgh. As it turned out, Harris was already on the bus when the conversation took place. The Ardor police were unable to act, and the officers wouldn't be able to catch up with him. The Pittsburgh police were their last hope. Timing was crucial, and the police investigating Christina's death contacted the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Agency for assistance. They informed the task force of the bus's expected arrival time in Pittsburgh and shared a photo of Harris, helping them plan a strategic ambush. The officers blocked off all potential escape routes and were prepared to apprehend the suspect at a moment's notice. As the bus approached, one of the employees spotted Harris and allowed him to disembark calmly, reducing the likelihood of panic or chaotic behavior. About 10 minutes later, a police officer intercepted Harris. Harris gave a false name when asked to identify himself. He was arrested and taken to the police station, where detectives from Philadelphia interrogated him about his involvement in Christina's case. Harris claimed that he met Christina at a bar or nightclub, where she was alone, and he approached her. He admitted to being under the influence of both illegal substances and alcohol at the time. After chatting and having a drink, Christina invited him to her place. Once they arrived, Harris asked the taxi driver to wait, intending to return shortly. However, he ended up staying with Christina, and they drank multiple bottles of wine together. He claimed that they then engaged in an intimate relationship with mutual consent and used a prohibited substance. Afterward, Harris demanded that Christina pay him $1,200, which she refused. The situation escalated into a physical altercation when Christina allegedly hit Harris with a wine bottle. In response, Harris claimed he hit her in the face, causing her to fall to the floor. When Christina attempted to call for emergency assistance, Harris strangled her with sweatpants until she lost consciousness. Despite his account, several inconsistencies were found in his story. During the toxicology examination, experts found no prohibited substances in Christina's body, only alcohol. This contradicted the suspect's initial claim that he had only hit her once. When confronted with the results, Harris admitted to lying. Harris initially tried to convince detectives of his innocence, claiming Christina was fine when he left her apartment. However, during a subsequent interrogation, he fully confessed to his guilt. He explained that he had panicked after severely beating her, leaving her while she was still breathing, and covering her with a blanket to avoid the sight. Ultimately, Jonathan Harris confessed to taking Christina's life and attempting to escape detection by jumping off the balcony. Despite his earlier confession, Harris pleaded not guilty at the trial. Nevertheless, the investigators had gathered substantial evidence, making it impossible for Harris and his lawyer to win the case. The court was expected to sentence Jonathan Harris to 22 to 40 years in prison for the crime of third-degree life deprivation. However, the large amount of evidence presented by the prosecutors convinced the court that the crime was intentional, making life imprisonment a possibility. During the trial, a key witness testified against Harris. This witness had shared a room with Harris at a psychiatric clinic and had previously reported Harris to the police. Harris had confessed to the crime while in the clinic, telling the witness that he enjoyed the feeling of squeezing someone and watching them take their last breath. In the end, Judge William Mark Carpenter sentenced Jonathan Wesley Harris to 30 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge handed down an additional 22 to 45-year sentence to Harris. The lengthy sentence was intended to send a message to future authorities who might consider granting him early release or pardon. In a separate case, Andre Melton was arrested in December 2018 and charged with burglarizing Carlin Craft's apartment. He was sentenced in March 2020 to 1 to 4 years in prison, followed by 3 years of consecutive probation, totaling 7 years under court supervision. Before receiving his sentence, Melton apologized to Carlin Craft's family. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sierra Breland. Sierra LaClaire, a cheerful and ambitious woman from Cleveland, Georgia, grew up with a dream to live in Atlanta one day. To achieve her goal, she had to leave her home state and pursue higher education. She attended the University of Tennessee for her undergraduate degree and then earned her law degree from Florida State University. Sierra became a successful lawyer, specializing in insurance defense. According to her mother, Kelly, Sierra was an energetic person who overcame obstacles to achieve her goals. She was happy, loving, and dedicated to her career. In October 2020, Sierra met Xavier Breland on Tinder, and their relationship quickly blossomed. They got married just 6 months later, and Sierra soon became pregnant. During this time, she provided legal assistance to Xavier in his dispute with his ex-wife. They decided to start a new life in Carmel, Indiana, where Sierra secured a job at a law firm. At the end of 2021, she gave birth to a son, whom they named Jackson. Xavier and Sierra appeared to be a perfect couple from the outside, but their relationship was troubled from the start. According to Shelby Campbell, Sierra's best friend, problems began to surface shortly after they started dating. Sierra had initially tried to end things with Xavier, but he refused to accept rejection. He showed up uninvited at her apartment and sent threatening messages when he saw her with another man. Sierra gave Xavier another chance, and they married 6 months later. However, Sierra confided in Shelby about her growing fears and concerns about her husband's behavior. In one text message, Sierra expressed her feelings of being torn between her love for Xavier and her fear of his increasingly bad behavior. She worried about their future together, citing his lack of remorse for his actions and his tendency to blame her for his behavior. Their text exchanges, which Shelby shared, demonstrate the depth of Sierra's fear. On multiple occasions, Sierra called the police out of desperation, but by the time they arrived, Sierra would downplay the situation, fearing the consequences of speaking out against her husband. This cycle repeated itself in both Georgia and Indiana, where the police were called to their residence multiple times. Sierra's parents, Kelly and Nick Lair, were aware that her home life with Xavier was troubled. They encouraged her to end the relationship, reassuring her that she could always return to the safety of her family home. Sierra's journey to Georgia began when she and Xavier embarked on the 11-hour drive south. Sierra arrived at her parents' house on February 19th, where she spent the night with relatives she hadn't seen since moving to Indiana. Sierra planned the trip to visit her family in Georgia, secretly intending to stay and divorce her husband Xavier due to escalating abuse. She told her parents about her plans and the abuse, and they supported her decision. On February 19th, Sierra arrived at her parents' house in Cleveland, Georgia, and reaffirmed her decision to divorce Xavier. The next day, she left to pick up her son Jackson from her mother-in-law's house in Johns Creek, Georgia. Sierra sent a text message to her best friend saying that she was waiting to pick up Jackson, but Xavier was refusing to hand him over to her. On February 21st, Sierra texted Nick, her father, saying she'd return home the next morning, and he gave her permission. When her father didn't hear back the next day, he reached out, and Sierra replied that everything was fine, just that she was feeling under the weather. Nick texted Sierra on Wednesday and Thursday, but she didn't respond. By Friday, her family was worried. On Saturday, Nick received a call from an Indiana police officer, who said Sierra was missing and her husband had filed a report. The family was shocked, wondering why Sierra hadn't told them she was in Indiana. Nick called Xavier's father. He denied seeing Sierra, but it was later revealed that Xavier had reported her missing to the Carmel Police Department on February 26, 2022. Video footage showed her last known location was her mother-in-law's home in Georgia on February 24th. Sierra disappeared on February 25th after leaving her Carmel home to walk to a store around 1 p.m. She was last seen wearing a black top and purple shorts, despite the low temperature. However, she never arrived at the store and left behind her personal belongings, including 3 phones and her 5-month-old son. The family finds it suspicious as Sierra had a burner phone for emergencies and wouldn't leave her baby behind. Kelly, Sierra's mother, said Sierra confided in her about the couple's financial struggles and alleged her son-in-law was physically and emotionally abusive. When Sierra went missing, leaving her baby behind, Kelly feared the worst. Kelly described Sierra as a loving mom who prioritized her son's care. When Sierra vanished without the baby, her husband's alibi seemed suspicious. 2 days later, police visited Xavier, Sierra's husband, after an accidental gunshot at his home. His criminal past, including a 2005 felony conviction, raised suspicions. Xavier was named a person of interest in his wife Sierra's disappearance and arrested on an unrelated charge. He had an outstanding warrant for aggravated stalking in Qua County, where he had tracked his ex-wife using a GPS device in their children's stuffed animal. 2 weeks after Sierra's disappearance, police, volunteers, family, and friends searched neighborhoods in Johns Creek, focusing on areas along Medlock Bridge Road. They passed out flyers and set up electronic signs asking for the public's help, and contacted companies to display Sierra's information across Metro Atlanta. The family of Sierra sought information on her disappearance, specifically regarding a white 2017 Volkswagen Tiguan. During the investigation, Xavier, Sierra's husband, was the only person seen getting out of the car at gas stations and shops. Law enforcement officials searched the mother-in-law's house, collecting evidence with a search warrant, and forensic professionals and cadavered dogs to look for signs of a struggle or potential blood stains. A search of Xavier Breland's residence by authorities, including a K-9 unit, found no trail. A video from March 2022 shows Xavier telling his children that Sierra was kidnapped and won't be coming home, contradicting his previous statement to police. The video was obtained while Xavier was in jail for aggravated stalking, unrelated to Sierra's disappearance. In August 2022, Xavier was found not guilty, but he was quickly arrested again and extradited to Indiana to face a new charge, unlawful possession of a firearm by a serious violent felon. At his initial hearing, Xavier asked the judge to reduce his bail to an amount his mother could afford. The judge set the bail at $35,000, lower than the $50,000 requested by prosecutors. Xavier promised the judge that he would turn his life around if released, even offering to get a job as a truck driver. Despite Xavier's plea, the judge ultimately set the bail at $100,000. Xavier was eventually released in February 2023 after posting bail. However, this decision would have consequences that will be discussed later. Xavier was repeatedly questioned about Sierra Breland's disappearance, but he maintained his innocence, claiming she vanished after going to the store. He stuck to this story, denying any involvement in her disappearance. The search for evidence in Sierra Breland's disappearance is a daunting task, considering the vast areas of land that need to be searched. Court documents revealed that some items were taken from Xavier's mom's home. Crime scene investigators removed the carpet and mattress from the home on April 21, 2022. After Xavier's arrest on March 1, 5-month-old Jackson was taken into state care. Sierra's parents, Nick and Kelly, are now able to be with their newborn grandchildren and are working to bring the infant back home to Georgia. Despite Sierra remains missing. Over the past year, multiple searches have been conducted, focusing on specific areas, but sadly, no leads have been found. Xavier Breland is the only person of interest named in Sierra's disappearance, but no charges have been brought against him. Her family believes he knows what happened to her and is the only one who can give them answers. Kelly LeClaire thinks Sierra's body could be in Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, or Indiana and is asking outdoor enthusiasts to be on the lookout. Sierra's parents now have custody of the couple's child. Xavier was released on bail for an unrelated firearms case, but failed to appear in court and a warrant has been issued for his arrest. The FBI is now involved in the case, and the search for Sierra and Xavier continues. The disappearance of both Sierra and Xavier has raised many unanswered questions. Sierra's mother believes Sierra feared Xavier and didn't plan to return to Indiana with him. With both missing, the case is now more urgent. The trial for Xavier's gun charge has been postponed, and authorities and Sierra's family are seeking public help to locate them and shed light on their disappearances. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kristen Trickle. Kristen Trickle was born on August 14, 1993, in a small town in southeastern Nebraska. However, her early childhood was marked by turmoil. Her biological mother abandoned the family when Kristen was just 3 years old. Despite the challenges, Kristen's father, James, raised her on his own, providing for her every need. Unfortunately, James struggled with a severe and worsening illness. Tragically, he passed away when Kristen was 16 years old. As a result, Kristen was at risk of being sent to a shelter until she turned 18, as there were no other close relatives to care for her. Fortunately, Kristen's aunt and uncle, who lived in Kansas, stepped in to provide a loving home. Although they already had 3 children of their own, they were willing to take in their orphaned niece and give her a comfortable and happy life. Kristen met Colby, a talented young musician, at church. At 18, Colby was already skilled on the guitar and wrote his own songs. He was passionate about building a successful music career. As they spent more time together, Kristen and Colby's friendship blossomed into a romance. Colby's charming personality and musical talents captivated Kristen, and he often wrote songs for her. He was outgoing, friendly, and had a way of making people feel at ease. After graduating from high school, Colby's interests shifted towards the military. He enlisted in the U.S. Armed Forces at 18 and went on to serve for 3 years, establishing a solid military career during that time. Colby maintained a close relationship with Kristen, frequently calling and corresponding with her. At 21, he made a surprise decision to join the reserves, returned home, and proposed to Kristen, who happily accepted. They got married in April 2014. After their wedding, Colby and Kristen settled in Hays, Kansas, where Colby completed his college education and pursued a music career, albeit with limited success. He performed at local events and parties, playing cover versions of popular songs. They had 2 dogs, which they loved dearly, and many people considered their marriage to be happy. However, tragedy struck 5 years into their marriage. On Halloween Eve, October 31, 2019, at around 4 a.m., a distress call was made to emergency services. The caller, who identified himself as Colby Kristen, reported that his wife, Kristen, had shot herself in the head with a revolver that was kept in their home. When medical help and the police arrived at the scene, a young man opened the front door for the officers, but stayed outside himself. Inside, the team found Kristen, who appeared to be surprisingly calm despite the severity of the situation. When the officers entered the bedroom, they found a woman, Kristen, lying on the bed in a pool of her own blood. A large revolver was on her abdomen, and she had a visible gunshot wound on her chin. At first, it seemed like she had already died, but surprisingly, she moved her hand, and an officer detected a weak pulse and breathing. The officers moved Kristen to the adjacent room to position her on the floor for resuscitation attempts. Despite their efforts, Kristen had died by the time the ambulance arrived, and the medical team confirmed her death. Sergeant Brandon Hotman went outside to inform Colby, Kristen's husband, that she had passed away. Colby repeatedly asked if Hotman was sure, and when he was told the truth, he broke down in tears. However, his behavior and tears seemed insincere, given that just minutes earlier, he had been chatting casually with other patrolmen about video games. At first glance, the scene suggested that she had taken her own life, but experienced detectives quickly suspected that something was amiss. It was the eve of Halloween, and she had been preparing for the celebration, which made her apparent decision to end her life all the more puzzling. The detectives found handmade costume decorations on her vanity and themed treats in the kitchen, including lollipop bats and ghosts, gummy worms, and other sweets. This suggested that she had been looking forward to the holiday, which made her death even more unexpected. She was found nearly undressed, wearing only her underwear, which was unusual. Typically, women take care to present themselves in a way that they would want to be seen, even in death. Furthermore, the method of death, a gunshot to the head, was also uncharacteristic of a woman. This method is often avoided by women due to concerns about disfiguring themselves. Kristen's body was severely damaged. One of the most puzzling aspects of her death was the gun itself. The large revolver would have been difficult for Kristen to handle due to her small size and fragile nature. It would have been hard for her to hold the gun, let alone twist her arm to shoot herself in the chin. The position of the gun also raised questions for the officer, as it was lying on her stomach, pointing sideways. Kristen's husband later explained that after finding her, he too had considered taking his own life. He held the revolver to his temple but then changed his mind and called emergency services, hoping to save his wife. At the scene of the crime, detectives were surprised when the victim's phone, which was sitting on a nightstand, rang with an alarm. It turned out that she had set the alarm to remind herself of plans for the morning, but it seemed that she had changed her mind and taken her own life during the night. This unusual detail raised suspicions, and detectives thought that someone might have staged the scene to look like a suicide. As a result, the victim's husband, Colby, became the main suspect and was asked to come to the police station for questioning. He agreed to go willingly. When Colby arrived at the police station, he seemed upset but not overly distraught. He remained calm and confident as he explained what had happened the previous evening. According to Colby, his wife Kristen, a manager at Walmart who was expecting a promotion, had come home from work and they had played video games together. Then, he went to bed early because he wasn't feeling well. Kristen had gone to the kitchen to finish preparing holiday treats, leaving Colby to sleep. But in the middle of the night, a loud bang jolted Colby awake. The sudden noise left him dazed and disoriented, his ears ringing, and he couldn't see anything in the darkness. When he finally turned on the light, he was shocked to find his wife Kristen lying motionless beside him, her head bleeding severely. Strangely enough, if it's true as stated by Colby, he attempted to revive his wife, but soon realized it was hopeless. He then picked up a revolver, put it to his own head, but ultimately set it back down on her body. He called emergency services and went outside to wait for the police. This sequence of events raises several questions. For example, why did he place the gun on her abdomen instead of disposing of it elsewhere? It's also unclear why he waited outside for the police and medics if he thought his wife might still be alive. In situations like this, people usually try to save the person's life or apply pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding. However, Colby did not attempt to help his wife again, claiming he was in shock. While a police officer was trying to provide first aid before the medics arrived, he did not show any interest in his wife's condition. Instead, he stood outside and casually chatted with a police officer about music and video games. When Colby learned of Kristen's death, he briefly teared up, but quickly composed himself. At the police station, he answered routine questions, including whether Kristen had life insurance, which he denied. However, he mentioned that he was eligible for minor payouts from his time in the armed forces. During the conversation, Colby began boasting about his military accomplishments, claiming to have worked in intelligence and participated in special operations worldwide. Despite sounding credible, Colby's claims were largely false. When asked why he thought Kristen might have taken her own life, he attributed it to her long history of depression, which stemmed from a traumatic childhood and adolescence. He cited her mother's betrayal, her father's death, and her forced relocation to live with an uncle and aunt she had never met before as contributing factors. Colby's words seemed convincing, but experienced investigators sensed he was lying and had possibly rehearsed his story. Despite their suspicions, they had no concrete evidence to charge him with a crime, so they had to release him. Kristen's family was shocked and devastated by her death. Her uncle, aunt, and siblings immediately traveled 500 miles to speak with the police and make funeral arrangements. They strongly believed that Kristen would never have taken her own life, citing her strong religious faith and regular church attendance. According to her family, Kristen was a happy and optimistic person who loved life and had big plans for the future. She had even been working on opening a shelter for homeless animals and had found a property she wanted to lease. Investigations confirmed that Kristen had been planning to rent a new property and was expecting a promotion at work, which she was proud of. She was also preparing for Halloween and had promised to visit her sister for her birthday in November. Her relatives stated that she had no history of depression or mental health issues and did not have any harmful habits. Her family also emphasized that Kristen would never abandon her dogs, which she loved dearly. They suspected that her husband, Colby, might have been involved in her disappearance. They described Colby as a controlling and cruel man who dictated whom Kristen could interact with and would become enraged if she didn't respond to his calls or messages immediately. He prohibited her from contacting her relatives, but she would secretly call them from her husband's home. Visits with her family were infrequent. During her last visit, she confided in them that she could no longer endure the mistreatment and had discussed it with her husband. She warned that if things didn't improve, they would have to separate. The autopsy of Kristen revealed a single bullet wound on her chin, which suggested that the shot was fired while she was on her back with the gun pressed to her head. While it was possible that she could have shot herself, it would have been very difficult to do so. There were no signs of struggle or resistance on her body. The detectives, however, were not convinced. Given Colby's history of controlling behavior, they suspected that he might have been violent towards Kristen in the past. They conducted a thorough examination of Kristen's body, looking for any signs of bruises, abrasions, or scratches that might indicate a history of abuse. Despite their efforts, no internal or external injuries were found, aside from the gunshot wound. The investigation then shifted its focus to Colby's personality, revealing that he was a habitual liar who frequently deceived others and even himself with convincing falsehoods. Colby's story didn't add up. Despite his claims of being in danger and having connections to intelligence, he had no history of being in high-risk situations or working with intelligence agencies. In fact, he had been dishonest with those around him about his music career and income. In reality, his wife Kristen was the primary breadwinner, working hard to support their family. Colby, on the other hand, only played occasional gigs during holidays and spent most of his time playing video games. He had talent, but lacked the persistence and patience to succeed, and his laziness held him back. The police investigation uncovered some information. A search of Colby and Kristen gadgets revealed a revealing look at their lives. Kristen's phone calendar was filled with appointments, from haircuts to meetings with a real estate agent. Meanwhile, Colby's messages showed that he had been flirting with another woman, even while at the police station. He had exchanged messages on a laptop in the living room, raising suspicions about his honesty. A recovered search history also revealed that Colby had been researching life insurance payouts in the event of death shortly before the tragedy. This discovery raised more questions about Colby's motives and potential involvement in the events that unfolded. An investigation revealed that Colby had lied about his financial situation. He had taken out 2 insurance policies on his wife, naming himself as the beneficiary in the event of her death. These policies included military spouse insurance and a standard life insurance policy, with payouts that were much higher than Colby had initially claimed. In fact, he had calculated exactly how much he would receive if his wife died. Despite the suspicious circumstances and Colby's inconsistent statements, the case ultimately hinged on the forensic expert's report. The report concluded that there were no signs of violence on the body, except for a single gunshot wound, suggesting that Kristen may have taken her own life. The case was eventually closed, and Colby received the insurance payouts, nearly $50,000 from the military spouse insurance and over $100,000 from the life insurance policy. On the same day the money was deposited into his account, Colby ordered a life-sized realistic doll from an online store, apparently for intimate purposes. Colby indulged in a lavish lifestyle, buying a new gaming console, an electric guitar, and expensive musical equipment. He spent the rest of the money on fancy clothes and frequent nights out at bars and restaurants, feeling carefree and convinced that he had gotten away with the crime since there was no evidence against him. For nearly 2 years, Colby lived a life of luxury, but in the summer of 2021, a new district prosecutor took office and reopened the investigation into Colby's wife's disappearance. Detectives had approached the prosecutor, convinced that Colby had murdered his wife. They presented evidence, including the restored browser history, Colby's unusual behavior, and his clear motive. After reviewing the case, the prosecutor authorized the reopening of the investigation. In July 2021, Colby was arrested and charged with first-degree premeditated homicide and intentionally misleading the investigation. During his arrest, he remained calm and immediately contacted his lawyers, who began working on his defense. Colby's defense team argued that his wife had suffered from chronic depression for many years and that her disappearance was inevitable. They also portrayed Colby as a loving and caring husband, a valorous serviceman, and a devout person, contradicting the detective's suspicions. The prosecution took a unique approach by hiring experienced specialists to create a psychological profile of the deceased and examine her emotional state leading up to the tragedy. This method, known as a psychological autopsy, involved analyzing data from Kristen's phone, social media posts, recent photos, and interviews with her relatives, friends, and colleagues. After months of gathering and analyzing information, the experts reached a clear conclusion: Kristen had no intention of ending her life, given her short-term and long-term plans. The trial and verdict in this complex case were delayed, starting in September 2023, nearly 4 years after the tragedy. Although the defendant had a clear motive, acted suspiciously, and lied during interrogations, the forensic expert's initial conclusion initially worked in his favor. The prosecution had obtained a new report that could potentially change the course of the case. When questioned about the insurance inquiries on his computer, Colby claimed that his wife had likely made them to find out the payout amount. However, the timing of the requests contradicted his statement, as his wife was at work at the time, confirmed by surveillance footage. Colby was also asked about a life-size doll he had purchased shortly after his wife's death, as well as other expensive items. He explained that he couldn't sleep alone and needed something to hold on to, and that he bought the console and guitar to take his mind off his grief. His mother backed up his claims, vigorously defending her son throughout the trial. The psychiatrist's crucial evaluation revealed that Kristen had not intentionally ended her own life. This detailed assessment was instrumental in determining the events surrounding her death. The autopsy report revealed an unusual aspect: the angle at which the bullet entered Kristen's chin was peculiar. The forensic analysis indicated that the bullet was fired from the left side of Kristen, contradicting her dominant right-handedness. This raises questions about whether someone standing on Kristen's left side pulled the trigger or if she shot herself with her left hand. The latter is less plausible considering Kristen was a right-handed individual. This vital evidence raises serious concerns about Colby's potential involvement in Kristen's death. After deliberating the case, the jury unanimously delivered a guilty verdict, finding Colby guilty of all charges. Consequently, Colby received a life imprisonment sentence, eligible for parole after a minimum of 50 years. Notably, Colby refused to accept his guilt, despite being given ample opportunity. Throughout his appeals process, all of his attempts to refute his sentence were ultimately unsuccessful. In the end, no modifications were ever made to Kristen's official cause of death report. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nicholas Wilcox. Nicholas Wilcox, a 39-year-old man from Putnam, Connecticut, lives in a duplex apartment, a popular property type in Florida that is designed for 2 families, with separate rooms, yards, and entrances. Isabella, a 38-year-old woman from Brazil, was the first person invited to rent one of the vacant apartments by Nicholas Wilcox. She used to work as a flight attendant for a national airline in Brazil. After getting divorced in 2010, She moved to America with her children and later married an American, which helped her obtain a green card. Isabella's marriage ended in 2016, and she started dating Eric Robinson, a 46-year-old man from Massachusetts who had never been married and had no children. Despite their romantic feelings for each other, their relationship was occasionally turbulent due to their passionate nature and Eric's bachelor lifestyle. According to Isabella, Eric's behavior was inconsistent and unpredictable, switching between cheerfulness and aggression without warning. This led to repeated breakups and makeups. By June 2017, they had separated once again, shortly before Eric and Isabella moved in with Nicholas. Initially, the living arrangement worked well, with Nicholas and Isabella and Eric respecting each other's space while also spending quality time together. However, over time, problems arose. It was discovered that Eric was using and storing illicit substances, which explained his erratic mood swings. This behavior led to Eric's arrest on August 23, 2017. Nicholas was fortunate to have a steady stream of work, unlike Isabella, who struggled to find a suitable job. To make ends meet, she started helping her neighbor in the construction business. It's worth noting that Nicholas's family had a long history of working in similar trades. His grandfather was a fisherman and boat builder, while his father dedicated his life to construction. After graduating in 1996, Nicholas joined the family business, becoming a roofer. He worked alongside his older brother, Donald, as contractors, building their own client base. At 23, Nicholas started a family with his high school classmate, Kathy. They had a daughter a year later, and twins 3 years after that. Throughout this time, Nicholas worked hard to provide for his family. Despite his busy schedule, friends and acquaintances remembered him as a devoted husband and father. However, his dedication to his professional pursuits may have contributed to the eventual breakdown of his family. They divorced shortly after the birth of their younger children. Despite this, Nicholas continued to support and communicate with his family. In 2017, Nicholas made a fresh start by moving to Florida to pursue better job opportunities. The new location proved to be a smart choice, as he saw a significant increase in clients. Unlike his previous seasonal work, Nicholas was now able to earn a steady income almost year-round. As a professional, Nicholas's skills were in high demand in Florida, where powerful hurricanes frequently damaged homes along the coast during storm season. His expertise was needed to reinforce and repair homes, which helped him build a successful business. Despite leaving his family back in Connecticut, Nicholas remained committed to caring for his children from a distance, sending them financial support and visiting whenever possible, as per his agreement with his ex-wife. After living in a multi-apartment complex in Fort Lauderdale, Nicholas moved to the suburbs to lower his housing costs. This is when he met Isabella. As the hurricane season began, Nicholas's workload increased significantly due to daily orders. At the same time, Hurricane Irma was approaching the area where Nicholas lived and worked. An emergency was declared, and about 7 million people were evacuated from coastal areas. To prepare for the storm, Nicholas spent his time reinforcing homes, boarding up windows and doors, and later clearing the debris left behind. Nicholas's main job was to help people, and he got paid for it. But he wasn't in it just for the money. His older brother said that Nicholas always lent a hand to those in need. In September 2017, Florida was bracing for a devastating hurricane. Nicholas spent the day boarding up windows with plywood to prepare. As a result, there was a shortage of plywood in stores, leading to long lines of people waiting to buy some. At that time, Nicholas met a woman named Pamela, who was struggling to find materials to protect her home. Nicholas promised to help her, and that evening, he delivered the 7 sheets of plywood she needed. He then spent the whole day boarding up her doors and windows, refusing payment for his efforts. Nicholas was deeply sympathetic to Pamela's plight as a single mother in need of assistance. In response, he offered her help, and she was extremely grateful. This sparked a romantic connection between them. The devastating hurricane that followed brought Nicholas a substantial amount of work, which allowed him to employ his neighbor, Isabella, as his assistant. Isabella's responsibilities included cleaning up job sites and handing Nicholas tools as needed. As they spent more time together, their friendly interactions blossomed into romance. On September 3rd, they made a commitment to each other, sealing their promise with a handwritten vow in blood, symbolizing their desire for a long, happy life together, filled with many children. The lovers, Nicholas and Isabella, faced minor issues and disagreements soon after their union. These disputes escalated, culminating in a serious conflict on September 22nd, which led Isabella to leave home and spend the night in a hotel. However, they reconciled the next morning. According to Isabella, Nicholas was neglecting her and showing a lack of respect. Nicholas, on the other hand, believed she was exaggerating. Their disagreements ultimately led to severe consequences. On October 5, 2017, a mysterious call was made to the local police. The caller claimed to be Isabella's former husband and asked the police to contact Isabella, stating she had information about a recent crime. However, he didn't provide further details. The police responded promptly and called Isabella, who sounded hysterical. When questioned about the situation, she claimed everything was fine, except for a fight with her boyfriend, Nicholas. Isabella told the police that her partner had left her and driven away, but when they mentioned a call from her former husband, she broke down and confessed that her partner was actually dead. She claimed to know where the body was and offered to show them. When the police arrived at the address Isabella provided, they found a house that was being prepared for a hurricane, with all windows and doors boarded up. Inside, they noticed a strong smell of cleaning products and paint, indicating that one of the bedrooms had been thoroughly cleaned. However, upon closer inspection, the detectives suspected that someone was trying to cover something up. The walls and floor had been hastily and sloppily painted, and they found containers of hydrogen peroxide, which is often used to clean bloodstains. They discovered small bloodstains on the bedding and bedside table, and it was clear that the old mattress had been replaced. The police found blood stains throughout the room, suggesting a violent crime had taken place. Isabella had attempted to clean up the scene but hadn't finished before the police arrived. Isabella was discovered inside the duplex, visibly distressed, and explained that she had been under the influence of a sedative during the phone call with her ex-husband, which accounted for her unusual behavior. Despite her initial confusion, Isabella confirmed that she knew what had happened in the room and where the body was located. Due to her unstable state, the police decided to take her to the station for further questioning. Meanwhile, the police had spoken with her ex-husband again, who provided a partial account of the events. According to Isabella's ex-husband, she had called him and told him about the crime. However, during her interrogation, Isabella claimed that her former boyfriend, Eric Robinson, was involved in the crime. She stated that on October 5th, around 2 a.m., Eric had arrived at the duplex, found her and Nicholas asleep, and became enraged by a vow hanging above the bed's headboard in the bedroom. Eric woke Isabella by holding a knife to her throat, threatening to harm her if she screamed. As he did, she saw Nicholas, who was lying next to her, struggling to breathe. But Eric didn't allow her to look any further and forced her out of the bedroom. Then, he brutally beat Nicholas, who was defenseless, using a brass knuckle and the bat. After the beating, Eric wrapped Nicholas' body in a tarp and tied it up with straps. He threatened Isabella, forcing her to help him get rid of the body. Later, the detectives were confused as to why Isabella, instead of calling the police, had called her ex-husband. In an explanation, Isabella said she was terrified and sought comfort and guidance. According to her, Eric also made her clean up the crime scene and erase all evidence. Before leaving, he returned her phone, which he had taken earlier. Her confession raised doubts and required further investigation. Additionally, the detectives noticed visible bruises and scratches on Isabella's body, which she claimed were a result of Eric beating her after Nicholas' death. The investigation started with a search for the victim and the suspect, who revealed the location of Nicholas. While medical examiners worked on the body, forensic specialists arrived at the scene. Meanwhile, law enforcement searched for Eric, who had been released from prison on October 3rd and was living at a different address. During this time, Eric had met a woman, Merida, and was staying with her. Merida told the police that on the night of October 5th, her boyfriend received a phone call and left immediately. He returned around 5 a.m., packed his things, and left again without explanation. When asked if she noticed any bloodstains on her boyfriend's clothes, Merida said she hadn't seen anything suspicious. Eric was found around 8 p.m., 4 miles away from the house. He refused to cooperate with the investigation and was taken into custody for further inquiry. During the interrogation, Eric provided a different account of the events than Isabella's. According to Eric, Isabella had contacted him on the night of October 5th, despite having a restraining order against him. Isabella attacked Nicholas while under the influence of banned substances and ultimately ended his life. After regaining her composure, she realized she needed help and asked Eric to assist her. In exchange, she promised to rekindle their relationship and start anew. Eric, still having strong feelings for her, agreed to her terms. The investigation revealed that Isabella was not as innocent as she seemed. She had a history of police encounters, and on September 22nd, a heated argument with Nicholas got out of hand. Under the influence of Xanax and other substances, Isabella became violent, destroying some of Nicholas' belongings and damaging his work vehicle. Fearing for his life, Nicholas contacted the police. Although they reconciled the next morning and Nicholas dropped the complaint, investigators discovered Isabella's history of erratic behavior, including a conversation with her ex-husband that shed more light on her past. He described Isabella as having a volatile personality and a hot temper. During their argument, he had threatened to report her to immigration services if she continued to behave in such a manner. For Isabella, the opportunity to live in the U.S. was crucial, so the threat of deportation was devastating. It's possible that during another argument, Isabella's explosive personality led her to react violently, motivated by her desire to stay in America. To gather more information, detectives started interviewing people close to them. A neighbor who lived in the adjacent duplex proved to be a crucial witness. She reported seeing Eric arrive at the scene in his car on the night of the crime. He then retrieved some tools and trash bags before leaving the area. The investigation continued, with substantial evidence collected. On October 11th, Isabella was called in for another interrogation, which she attended voluntarily since she had not been arrested at that point. Detectives reviewed video surveillance footage and determined that on the night of the incident, Isabella personally moved Nicholas's body and disposed of it in a trash container. During this time, she remained calm and composed, making decisions independently. She also met with Eric Robinson that night. Isabella appeared relaxed and friendly. She even purchased items needed for emergency repairs herself. However, as the investigation progressed, she began to change her story, adding new details about the events. Isabella claimed that Eric had threatened to kill her and deport her and her children, forcing her to act as she did. Although her statement seemed believable, investigators were cautious in their conclusions. Both Eric and Isabella had questionable pasts, which raised suspicions. Eric, in particular, had a history of run-ins with the law, dating back to 2001, primarily for possession and distribution of narcotics. In August 2016, Isabella had legitimate reasons to fear Eric in question, as he had committed an aggravated assault against a woman. In June 2017, he was arrested for strangulation and later that year for possessing prohibited substances. Eric's neighbors were terrified of him due to his aggressive and unpredictable behavior, and they actively avoided him. On October 14, experts discovered traces of Isabella DNA on the Nicholas body, contradicting her claim of not having touched Nicholas. This evidence suggested that she was involved in the violent crime against her lover, at the very least in disposing of the body and eliminating evidence. Despite the evidence, neither Isabella or Eric admitted to any wrongdoing. While Eric was held in custody, Isabella was briefly detained before being released to await trial. Although everyone expected the court proceedings to begin soon, various complications and delays pushed the trial back by 5 years. The trial of Eric Robinson was significantly delayed due to the bureaucratic issues. During this time, the prosecution developed its strategy and tactics, while the defense thoroughly reviewed the investigation findings. Additionally, new evidence was discovered, including the recovery of Eric's deleted social media account, which he had used to discuss the crime with his former friend. As the trial approached, Isabella made a plea deal with the prosecution. She agreed to testify against Eric Robinson. On April 10, 2023, the trial finally took place. The prosecution argued that Eric was solely responsible for the crime against Nicholas, while Isabella's role was presented as a witness who tampered with evidence and helped eliminate traces, a crime in itself. The trial was marked by several cancellations due to legal complexities, but resumed after a week. Throughout the trial, Eric was charged with premeditated murder. Despite inconsistencies in Isabella's testimonies, her attorney maintained her innocence. The prosecution emphasized witness statements describing Eric's unusual behavior on the night of the crime. Specifically, Eric used his new girlfriend's car, which didn't have GPS tracking, to avoid detection. He also left his mobile phone at home to prevent tracking. Separately, other case details came to light. After the crime, Eric and Isabella were together in a room nearby, where they were intimate. Isabella later explained her actions, stating she was under the influence of strong sedatives at the time and also feared for her life after what had happened. The motive behind the brutal and senseless murder of Nicholas was revealed to be jealousy. Although Isabella had ended their relationship, Eric still considered her his girlfriend. When he was released from prison, he returned home to find that significant changes had taken place in his absence, which only fueled his rage and hatred. During this time, Eric plotted his revenge against his perceived rival. He committed a cold-blooded attack while Nicholas was asleep and vulnerable, sealing his fate with the first strike. Eric then attempted to cover his tracks by scattering evidence in various locations. The murder weapon was later found in a landfill, and Nicholas's body was discovered wrapped in tarpaulin and hidden in a trash container. Isabella, following Eric's instructions, painted over the blood-splattered walls and cleaned the area to conceal the evidence. Ultimately, 51-year-old Eric was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for second-degree murder. Isabella was found guilty of aiding Eric, but the court considered threats and coercion as mitigating circumstances. As a result, she received a suspended sentence and is on probation until 2026. Isabella was willing to do whatever it took to gain U.S. citizenship. Just 10 days after Eric was incarcerated, the parties signed another agreement in which Eric promised to marry Isabella. However, he failed to follow through on this promise. It seems that Isabella is willing to marry anyone as long as it helps her maintain her status. All the men she has been involved with have been used for her own selfish purposes, and she has manipulated them into considering marriage. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maricela Botella Valadez. Maricela Botella Valadez was born in 1997 in Seattle, Washington. As the eldest of 2 children in a Latin American family, she was known for being a kind, outgoing young woman with many friends. She excelled in school and went on to attend a prestigious university after graduating. Maricela was a stunning young woman with a petite frame, long brunette hair, and big brown eyes. She was always the center of attention and loved being around people, often attending lively parties and making the most of every day. On October 3, 2020, Maricela traveled to Dallas to visit old friends, but she planned to return by Monday morning. Her brother was supposed to pick her up from the airport on October 5, and they would head to the university together. However, when the plane arrived, Maricela was nowhere to be found. A search for the missing student began when her brother realized she wasn't among the passengers who had disembarked from the flight. He tried to call her, but her phone was turned off. He then contacted their parents to inform them of the situation. Maricela's disappearance was unusual, as she was a responsible and serious young woman who would not normally miss university classes without warning. Maricela's family reached out to her friends in Dallas to gather information about her possible whereabouts and her last known location. Their efforts led them to a popular club in the city, where she was spotted partying with friends the night before her disappearance. While there, she had met a man named Chuck and they had danced and socialized together over drinks. After that, they of them left the club, and Maricela was not seen again. When her family was unable to reach her by phone, they grew extremely concerned and frightened, prompting them to quickly report her disappearance to the police. She had purchased tickets for a flight to Seattle, but she never boarded the plane. Her whereabouts since that night were unknown. To investigate further, it was crucial to identify the new person she had met, their destination, and whether she had left with them voluntarily. Reviewing surveillance footage from outside the club, authorities observed Maricela exiting with a young man, but his face was not clearly visible on the video. According to the footage, Maricela appeared to be walking with a man voluntarily before getting into a black Audi car and driving off in an unknown direction. Several days had passed since her disappearance, and she had not contacted anyone, logged into her social media accounts, or made any transactions on her bank cards. The police urgently needed to identify the stranger she was with to determine where to search for them. One of her friends reported that the companion might be named Chuck, but this information was not enough. However, street camera footage helped investigators determine the direction the car had traveled. Further review of supermarket security footage revealed that they had stopped to shop, appearing happy and affectionate towards each other. The footage showed Maricela selecting drinks and candies, while he paid for the items using a card in the name of Charles Beltran. It became clear that Maricela had left with Beltran, a 31-year-old musician who was gaining popularity as a local rap star. However, Beltran had a troubled past, having been to prison twice for robbery and armed assault. He had been released on parole after serving less than 3 years and was on the verge of releasing his own music album. An investigation revealed that Maricela's phone had been active at a specific location on the night she went missing. The location was linked to a house owned by a woman named Lisa Dyke, who was renting a room to Beltran. When police and an FBI agent investigating Maricela's disappearance visited the house, they found it empty. The police were only able to reach Lisa Dyke by phone, as she said she was out of state for work. She confirmed that Charles Beltran had been renting a room in her home, but claimed he had moved out about 2 weeks ago. She also stated that she had no idea where he was after that. They searched the house where he used to live and made several alarming discoveries. The interior was a disaster zone with mess and unsanitary conditions everywhere. It appeared as if the residents had departed abruptly, only taking essential belongings and abandoning the rest. Dirty dishes were stacked high in the sink, old food and mold sat on the kitchen table, and garbage covered the corners of the floor. In stark contrast, investigators found multiple empty bottles of cleaning supplies scattered around, and there were also remnants on the floor and carpet indicating an attempt to scrub areas clean. A disturbing black statue of death, draped in a black cloak and grasping a scythe, occupied one of the upstairs rooms. While it could have been dismissed as an eccentric decoration, its presentation as a makeshift altar, complete with wax candles, dried flowers, and 2 metal bowls, suggested a more sinister purpose. The setup bore an uncanny resemblance to the Mexican cult of Santa Muerte, which reveres a female embodiment of death. The house exuded an atmosphere of foreboding, as if a traumatic event had occurred, prompting the occupants to hastily gather their belongings and flee in a state of panic. A more thorough investigation was conducted using specialized tools to detect blood traces. This revealed multiple wiped blood stains in one of the bedrooms, the bathroom, and the hallway. The bedroom with the most significant bloodstains belonged to Charles, suggesting a violent crime had occurred there. However, the identity of the victim remained unclear. Despite attempts to clean the area, the blood had penetrated the carpet, seeped under the baseboards, and stained the wallpaper and furniture. To confirm the source of the blood, experts compared the samples with Morella's DNA. The results eliminated any remaining doubts, confirming that the blood belonged to Morella. The police had to seal the house as a crime scene, but their next challenge was to track down the main suspect, potential accomplices, and witnesses. However, this proved to be a difficult task as Charles had already fled the scene, and the owner had quickly put the house up for sale even before the police arrived. To gather more information, the police decided to investigate the people who had recently lived in the house. According to the neighbors, who described a complicated love triangle, 3 individuals had lived in the house: 57-year-old Lisa Dyke, 48-year-old Nina Morano, and 31-year-old Charles Beltran. However, the nature of their relationships and the reason for their sudden disappearance remained unclear. To move forward with the investigation, the police needed to look into each person's background and find them as soon as possible for questioning. The owner of the house, who was the only one reachable by phone, was a well-known lawyer with a commanding and ambitious personality. She had been married 3 times and had inherited a substantial amount of money after becoming a widow several years ago. Given her financial situation, it was unclear why she had rented a room to Charles, as she was not known for her charitable nature, suggesting that she may have had an ulterior motive. Charles Beltran, also known as Chuck, had big dreams of becoming a successful rapper. However, his lack of funds and connections, combined with a troubled past, made it difficult for him to get started. That was until he met Dyke, who offered him a helping hand. She took him in, setting up a small recording studio in her home, and even funded the production of several music videos to help launch his career. Dyke also provided Chuck with a car, paid for his social expenses, and bought him stylish clothing. Despite her significant financial investment in Chuck, Dyke maintained that their relationship was purely professional, insisting that she saw great potential in the young rapper and was simply investing in his future. The situation with Nina Morano was particularly interesting. She had been in a long-term relationship with Lisa, and after Lisa's husband passed away, they women no longer hid their romance. In fact, they had gotten married just a few months prior. Nina moved in with Lisa, who was already living with a young musician named Charles. Although Lisa denied it, a close friend claimed that she had a romantic relationship with Charles, and Lisa had even confided in her friend about how great he was as a lover. It seemed that Lisa was deeply in love with Charles, as evidenced by her efforts to look younger, including losing 55 pounds, changing her image, wearing bright makeup, and getting tattoos. Lisa had also made some significant changes to her life, including evicting her adult children from the home, citing that they were interfering with her personal life. Charles, on the other hand, had a clear interest in staying with Lisa, who was wealthy and could help him financially and advance his music career. However, as a physically attractive man, Charles often engaged in casual flings with young women, which made Lisa extremely jealous. But what was Nina Morano's role in all of this, and specifically, what did she have to do with Morella's disappearance? According to a close friend, Lisa's spouse, Na, was also involved in the unusual love triangle with Lisa and he. Na was a successful lawyer and a wealthy woman. The three of them lived a life of luxury together. After they got married, both women took his last name, Beltran, and the three of them lived together in the house. But what happened to the people who lived in the house where Morella's blood was discovered? After Morella disappeared, no one was seen at home again. Lisa was contacted once and answered a few questions, claiming she was in another state, but her phone was unreachable after that. There was no information about Na's whereabouts or the main suspect, Charles. On the night of October 5th, investigators monitored the mobile phone signals of the three residents and the missing person, Maricela, and found that all four signals were coming from within the house. By early morning, the signals had moved to a remote wooded area in suburban Dallas. Shortly after, the signals vanished. A few days later, Lisa briefly responded to messages on her secondary work phone, but it soon became unreachable as well. Using geolocation data from the mobile devices, authorities reconstructed the group's route that night, identifying the stops they made along the way. This information led them to suspect that the missing student's body might have been disposed of in this area. Although this narrowed down the search radius, the area was vast and challenging to navigate, hindering the progress of the investigation. The search for the missing Seattle student was suspended near the new year, as no body or clues were found. However, in March 2021, a local hunter discovered a human skull in the woods that appeared to be relatively recent. The hunter immediately reported the find to the police, who then sent the remains to a forensic laboratory for examination. Dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to the missing student, who had been gone for nearly 6 months. Although the body was badly decomposed and damaged by wild animals, making it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, forensic analysis revealed characteristic marks on the bones that suggested knife wounds. However, it was unclear whether these wounds were fatal. After the authorities found the body in the forest, they quickly identified the first suspects and tracked down Lisa, who had moved to Florida with her partner, Na. They had rented a house in Miami near the ocean. However, when the police arrived, only Na was apprehended, while Lisa went into hiding after learning about the situation. Charles, another suspect, was nowhere to be found, although he occasionally contacted his former girlfriends through messaging apps. In one of his last messages, Charles warned his acquaintances that the police were closing in and that they should be extremely careful. Meanwhile, Na, who was now in custody, denied any involvement in Marcela's disappearance, claiming she knew nothing about what had happened to her. Lisa, on the other hand, used her connections to try to hire a good lawyer for Na. While in Florida, Na attempted to sell her house in South Carolina as quickly as possible, likely to raise funds for their continued hiding or to flee the country. Authorities eventually tracked down Lisa and arrested her, and both women were taken back to Dallas. During initial questioning, neither woman provided any information, and their bail was set at $500,000 each. They were able to post bail and were released to house arrest, but were required to wear tracking devices that allowed authorities to monitor their movements. In August of the same year, Charles made a daring escape attempt, but police were hot on his trail and tracked him down to Utah, where he was hiding at the home of a former girlfriend. She, who had a 5-year-old son with Charles, was overjoyed to see him and didn't ask questions about his sudden return. When Charles was arrested, he initially refused to cooperate with the police or answer their questions. He was counting on his wealthy lover to use her influence and wealth to hire a top-notch lawyer to get him out of trouble. However, things took a dramatic turn on Christmas Eve in 2021. Lisa and Nina, who had been released on bail, suddenly went dark when their tracking bracelet stopped working due to the holiday chaos and high activity. The police didn't send a team to the suspect's location until the next day, but by then, they had already vanished. It was later discovered that the suspects had been carefully planning their escape for months. As a result, by the time the police pursued them, they had already crossed the border into Mexico undetected. From Mexico, they traveled to South Korea by air, and their trail eventually went cold in Cambodia. The FBI teamed up with the Cambodian police and immigration authorities to locate the suspects on the run. They women first raised suspicions after making a large cash withdrawal from an ATM, prompting authorities to monitor their movements. They tried to pay for everything in cash to stay under the radar, but security footage helped reveal their whereabouts. An ATM camera identified the fugitives, and another camera caught the license plate of the vehicle they arrived in. The vehicle's owner cooperated with police and took them to the residence where the foreign women were living extravagantly. They were recaptured in February 2022 and sent back to the United States, where they were taken into custody without the possibility of bail, ensuring they went directly to jail to face the law. Charles realized that his lover was only looking out for herself and had no intention of helping him avoid prison. This led him to decide to cooperate with the investigation and share information. His detailed account of the events that took place that night shocked many. Bellin admitted to being in a romantic relationship with Lisa, the homeowner, and her spouse, Na, but claimed it was motivated by financial gain and a desire to further his music career. He did not have genuine feelings for these women and instead often pursued younger, attractive women, openly engaging in numerous affairs. On October 5, 2020, Chuck met Maricela, a young student, at a nightclub. They spent the evening drinking and dancing together, and he eventually invited her back to his place. Maricela agreed, and when they arrived, Chuck's roommates, Na and Lisa, were already asleep. Chuck and Maricela went to his room, where they engaged in intimate activities and fell asleep. Later that night, Lisa woke up and entered Chuck's room, where she saw Maricela sleeping next to him. This triggered a jealous outburst, and Lisa went to the kitchen to grab a large knife. She then returned to Chuck's room and attacked Maricela, repeatedly striking her with the knife. Charles reported that he was woken up by a noise and was initially disoriented due to intoxication. When he turned on the light, he was met with a disturbing scene. Mariela's body had fallen to the floor beside the bed, where she had lost a significant amount of blood. Na entered the room, and both Charles and Na stood there for a few minutes, failing to provide any assistance to the victim. Once Charles regained his composure, he realized that he might be blamed for the crime due to his prior record, and that his influential acquaintances might avoid punishment. He claimed that this is why he agreed to help dispose of the body and conceal the crime. Charles stayed with friends for several days and, upon returning to collect his belongings, noticed that the blood stains on the floor and carpet had almost completely disappeared. Lisa informed him that she and Na had taken care of everything and destroyed the evidence of the crime. The three individuals involved decided it was best to leave town for a while and observe from a distance what would happen next. Lisa Dyke-Bell's defense team argued that she had no motive to harm she. According to her lawyer, Lisa's relationship with Chuck was purely professional, and she saw his music career as a valuable investment. She claimed that his personal relationships and interactions with others did not concern her. A key point made by her defense was that Lisa had recently gotten married to Moran and was happy in her relationship. However, it was unclear why she and her wife had decided to take the surname of their young lodger, Charles, after their wedding, despite claiming he was insignificant to them. During the trial, Lisa portrayed Charles as hot-tempered and cruel, especially when intoxicated, and stated that she feared him. Lisa's account of the events that night claims that Chuck brought a new woman home from the club, but their encounter turned violent when an argument broke out. Chuck allegedly grabbed a knife in a fit of rage. Lisa and Nina intervened, trying to separate they, but it was too late. Maricela was already dead. Chuck then coerced Lisa and Nina into helping him dispose of the body and clean up the crime scene, threatening to harm them if they didn't comply. However, a witness who testified in court, a friend of Lisa's, painted a different picture. According to the friend, Lisa was intensely fixated on Chuck and had often expressed a desire to get rid of any woman who got close to him. The friend suggested that Lisa's emotions got the better of her that night. The friend also mentioned a peculiar detail, a statue of Santa Muerte in Lisa's home, which was part of an improvised altar. Lisa had jokingly told her friend that she was into black magic and knew how to cast a spell to make a man loyal only to her. The ritual apparently did not work as planned, and she turned to using a knife instead. A real estate agent who was approached by the women shortly after the incident testified that they were desperate to sell several properties they owned as quickly as possible. They also wanted to put their home in Dallas up for sale, but were unable to do so while the investigation was ongoing because the house was a crime scene. The situation took a turn for the worse when the remains of she were found. At this point, Lisa and Nina were willing to sell the property at a significantly reduced price, just to get the money quickly. During the trial, the court considered Charles's full confession and his cooperation with the investigation. However, things took a turn for the worse for the fugitives after they attempted to flee to another continent. In March 2023, Lisa Dyke Beltran was convicted of a heinous crime against 23-year-old Maricela, as well as tampering with evidence and attempting to escape. She received a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Charles Beltran and Nina Morin, on the other hand, pleaded guilty and cooperated with the investigation. They were found guilty of concealing evidence. Nina received a 7-year prison sentence, but may be eligible for release in 3 years if she exhibits good behavior. Charles, who had prior convictions, was sentenced to 12 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 8 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nicole Loeb. On August 19, 2014, at 5 p.m., the Portland Emergency Services received a distress call from a man reporting a woman stabbed in the chest at the Timber Creek Apartments. The victim, who was still alive but struggling to breathe, needed immediate medical attention. The eyewitness requested an ambulance be sent to the scene as soon as possible. When paramedics arrived, they found the victim. Despite the paramedics' best efforts, she succumbed to her injuries. Before passing away, she shared crucial information. The man who made the 911 call explained that he and his wife were walking down the stairs towards the parking lot when they heard a scream. He looked to his right and saw a woman running towards them, crying out, "He stabbed me! He stabbed me!" The victim told them that she didn't know her attacker, but described him as wearing camouflage pants and a black hoodie. The manager of the Timber Creek Apartments identified the victim as 29-year-old Nicole Loeb, a leasing consultant who had been working at the complex for a few weeks. On August 19th, Nicole was driving a golf cart to deliver lease renewal letters to residents, along with a balloon and a popcorn package. She marked each apartment on a map as she made the deliveries. The investigation revealed that the attack likely occurred in a specific stairwell at Timber Creek, known as Breezeway. This conclusion was based on Nicole's notations and the map she had marked. It is believed that the attacker was waiting for her under the stairs, as several indicators pointed to this location, including a trail of blood drops and scattered leaflets at the foot of the stairs. During the investigation, several witnesses reported seeing a suspicious young male wearing a black hoodie and cam pants in the area around the time of the attack. By combining the reports and timelines of each sighting, detectives were able to piece together the path the suspect took into and out of Timber Creek. The Washington County Search and Rescue Team searched the woods along Cedar Mill Creek, which runs through the Timber Creek apartment complex. They found several items during their search and sent them to a laboratory to see if they were relevant to the case. The police contacted Chris Loeb, Nicole's husband, to inform him of the incident. Chris and Nicole had a blended family. including 2 daughters from his previous relationships and a son together. Nicole was a strong and resilient person who had overcome cancer as a teenager. She developed a passion for fitness and bodybuilding and competed in several events. Her dream was to become a coach and help others achieve their fitness goals. The attack on Nicole was not a robbery, and Tinoco did not attempt to remove any of her clothing. This suggests that the motive behind the attack may have been personal. As a result, detectives began to focus their attention on her husband, Chris. Nicole was a beautiful woman, a loving wife, an amazing mother, and a devoted friend. She was unafraid to share her faith and opinions with others, and her goal was to make the world a better place. Her legacy lives on, and it's clear that she achieved her goal. She touched the lives of everyone in the room in ways that will have a lasting impact. The police interviewed residents of the Timber Creek apartments and found 2 witnesses who saw a man in a black hoodie and cam pants matching the suspect's description running across the road during the time of the attack. The witnesses saw the man running towards the houses across the street from the Timber Creek apartments, not looking around, and with a hood over his head. Using the witnesses' descriptions, detectives created a sketch of the suspect and quickly distributed it throughout the city. A sketch of the suspect was shown on TV. Detectives also worked with informants, gathering several potential leads, including one from a man whose son knew someone named Taylor. According to the man who reported Taylor, he had been threatening people with a knife in recent weeks. The police located Taylor and brought him in for questioning. During the questioning, investigators found his statements unusual and suspected he might be suffering from a mental illness. When asked about Nicole Laub, he openly admitted to taking her life. However, Taylor's confession was inconsistent, repeating information from the news and inventing unrelated details. As a result, police excluded him from their list of suspects. Another potential lead emerged involving a man named Nick, who had a history of crime. Nick had some physical characteristics similar to the suspect in the sketch, but his past behavior didn't suggest he was capable of a crime like the one committed against Nicole. Despite having a history of run-ins with the law, Nick had never been known to physically harm anyone. When police brought Nick in for questioning, he denied any involvement in the crime and requested a lawyer. The police then obtained a search warrant for Nick's home, where they found a black hoodie and camouflage pants. However, the hoodie didn't match the witness's description because it had a prominent white logo on the front. The police sent the clothes to a lab for further analysis, but experts found no evidence linking them to the crime. The police obtained Nick's mobile phone records, which provided conclusive evidence that he was not at the crime scene when Nicole was attacked. This eliminated Nick as a suspect, leaving the investigation at a dead end. 3 weeks after Nicole's death, on September 13, 2014, the Eugene Police Department received a call came from Eugene, the second largest city in Oregon. On the night of the 13th, Heather Miller, a 39-year-old woman, was attacked as she was leaving a bar near Autzen Stadium after watching a game. Tinoco, identified as Jamie Tinoco, was publicly named by the police, who released his photo in the hopes that other victims would come forward. Detectives investigating the death of Nicole Laub noticed a resemblance between Tinoco's photo and their suspect sketch. Further investigation revealed that Tinoco lived with his parents in an apartment directly across from the Timber Creek apartment complex where Laub had died. This geographical proximity strengthened the suspicion that Tinoco might be responsible for her death. Detectives questioned Tinoco about his potential involvement in Laub's death, hoping he would confess, just as he had done in a separate case involving Heather Miller. However, Tinoco denied any involvement in Laub's death and refused to cooperate. As a result, the police had to gather evidence to link Tinoco to the crime. With his parents' apartment located directly across from the Timber Creek complex, the police obtained a search warrant. During the search, they found a black hoodie and cam pants in Tinoco's room which they sent to the lab for analysis. The lab report results with no DNA match found. While there's no concrete evidence linking Tinoco to Nicole's death, he's clearly responsible for attacking Heather Miller and showed no remorse, even taking pride in his actions during his trial. In a new interrogation, investigators used Tinoco's ego to their advantage, suggesting that if he confessed to Nicole Labeb's murder, he would gain respect from other inmates in prison. The detective implied that owning up to the crime would make him appear more formidable, rather than just a coward who attacked a woman from behind. After a brief silence, Tinoco began to open up about Nicole. He claimed that he didn't intend to kill her, but rather wanted to experience the feeling of stabbing someone. According to Tinoco, his goal was to hurt Nicole, not take her life. He described how he had seen Nicole parking a golf cart and carrying a balloon in a small package to an apartment on the second floor of Timber Creek, which is located near his apartment. Nicole was attacked when she went upstairs and then came back down. Tinoco hid behind a golf cart, then ran to the stairs and stabbed Nicole when she descended. He chose Nicole because she seemed like an easy target. When questioned about his intentions, he admitted that he had considered forcing Nicole into a sexual act, just as he had done with Heather Miller. However, he claimed that he didn't follow through with this plan because Nicole screamed loudly after being stabbed, prompting him to flee the scene. During a reenactment of the crime, Tinoco demonstrated how he escaped from the scene. Chris Lobb, Nicole's husband, was shocked to learn that the person responsible for his wife's death was only 17 years old. As a father of a 13-year-old daughter, Laub found it incomprehensible that someone just 4 years older than his daughter could commit such a heinous crime. The trial started in 2015. Tinoco confessed to the crime during the interrogation, but he claimed he was innocent in court. His lawyer argued that there was no DNA evidence linking Tinoco to the crime scene. The lawyer asked for mercy for Tinoco, who was 17 years old and severely mentally ill, and hoped that treatment could help him change his behavior. The defense presented only one witness, a psychologist who evaluated Tinoco and found that he exhibited symptoms of schizophrenia. However, another psychologist from the Oregon State Hospital disagreed, saying that Tinoco had a personality disorder, not schizophrenia. The jury was convinced of Tinoco's guilt after watching a video of his confession and an experiment where he recreated his actions at the time of the crime. Jamie Tinoco provided details during a reenactment of Nicole Laub's crime that only the perpetrator would know. This led to a guilty verdict on all counts in 2017. The jury was tasked with deciding Tinoco's sentence, choosing between life without parole or life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. However, they found insufficient mitigating circumstances to warrant the option of parole, resulting in a sentence of life without parole. Before the official sentencing, Circuit Judge Kirsten Thompson allowed Tinoco to speak. With his attorneys by his side, Tinoco apologized and asked for forgiveness. Chris Lobb, Nicole's husband, recalled that Tinoco's family approached them after the sentencing to offer condolences and apologize. However, in 2021, the Oregon Court of Appeals overturned Tinoco's conviction, citing changes in juvenile laws. At the time of the crime, Tinoco was automatically referred to adult court due to the nature of the offense. New reforms now allow for offenders between 15 and 17 years old to be tried in juvenile court, rather than being automatically referred to adult court. A new law requires prosecutors to request a hearing to decide if a juvenile's serious crime case should be moved to adult court. This change affects the overturned conviction of Tinoco in the Nicole Laub case. Although Tinoco remains in prison, his defense may try to reduce his sentence if he's retried and reconvicted. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lori Slasinski. Lori Slasinski, a 24-year-old former Auburn University student, disappeared mysteriously on June 10, 2006, from Auburn, Alabama. Her disappearance occurred after she had confirmed plans to attend a girls' night out at her best friend and coworker's house home. However, she never arrived. Located in eastern Alabama, Auburn is a rapidly growing city with a rich cultural mix and a strong sense of Southern hospitality. It is home to Auburn University, one of the nation's most recognized public universities. Lori was born to parents Casey and Arlene Slosinski on September 21, 1981. She had blue eyes and blonde hair, and her parents and older brother, Paul, adored her. The investigation into Lori's disappearance began with a disturbing discovery. Her dog was left unattended, the air conditioner was still on, and the telephone cord was missing from her home. The police were baffled by the lack of evidence, and Lori's family was left with unanswered questions. Had Lori left town in a hurry, or was something more sinister at play? After 16 years, the mystery of Lori's disappearance was finally solved, but the events surrounding her vanishing remain as puzzling as ever. The family originally came from New York State but later relocated to rural Alabama farm country near Auburn when Lori was 13. Growing up in a country setting with animals, Lori developed a passion for animals. According to her friends, Lori was stunning and enjoyed spending time with friends, watching movies, riding her bicycle, and playing video games. In addition to these leisure activities, she was diligent in her studies and received support from her family. After completing high school, Lori attended Auburn University, majoring in psychology with a minor in criminology. Her parents purchased a mobile home for her in a well-maintained house park popular with students, where she lived off campus with her cherished Yorkshire Terrier, Peanut. Lori maintained a close relationship with her family, and her mother would call her daily to check in. In 2005, Lori graduated with honors from Auburn University. Following graduation, she secured a job at the East Alabama Mental Health Center while still residing in the house park. She also made plans to pursue her master's degree in psychology in the near future. Lori's family was proud of her accomplishments, but they had no idea that something terrible was about to happen. On June 10, 2006, 24-year-old Lori planned a girls' night at her best friend Lindsey Braun's house. They intended to have a few drinks and watch a movie. Lori and Lindsey had met in their junior year at Auburn University and quickly became friends due to Lori's kind, charming, and outgoing personality. After graduating, they both worked at the same mental health facility, which strengthened their bond. At around 6:30 p.m. on June 10th, Lori called Lindsey to say she needed to stop at the store before heading over for their movie night. Unfortunately, Lori never arrived. Lindsey became worried when she didn't hear from Lori again that night or the next day. She called Lori multiple times and left messages on her home answering machine, but Lori never responded. When Lori didn't show up to work on Monday, June 12th, Lindsey's concerns escalated. It was highly unusual for Lori to miss work without informing anyone. After Lori failed to show up to work on Tuesday, June 13th, Lindsey and another colleague visited Lori's home to check on her. When they arrived at the house, Lindsey found the door unlocked and the air conditioning on, which was unusual. Although Lori was nowhere to be found, her dog, Peanut, was in his crate, looking well-fed and content, as if someone had been caring for him. Surprisingly, his crate was clean, despite Lori having been missing for several days. Lindsey felt a sense of unease as she realized it was unusual for Lori to leave her beloved pet alone and unattended. She recalled that Lori had placed 3 rugs on her kitchen floor because the dog refused to walk on the tile. However, when Lindsey entered Lori's home later that day, the rugs were missing, along with the outside trash can. On the same day, June 13, 2006, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a call from Lori's workplace, informing her that Lori had missed work for 2 consecutive days. Arlene immediately tried to contact Lori but was unable to reach her. Growing concerned for her daughter's well-being, Arlene left for Auburn after alerting her husband, Casey, about Lori's disappearance. Upon arriving at Lori's house, Arlene encountered a disturbing scene. The door was slightly ajar, and Lori's bed was perfectly made, but there was no sign of Lori. Her car was also missing. A closer inspection revealed that several items were gone, including the kitchen rugs, a pillow from the couch, a Galileo thermometer, a green trash can that usually held a rake and shovel, and the phone cord for the landline. Arlene's alarm grew as she realized that something was horribly wrong. She officially reported her daughter missing, holding on to the hope that Lori would eventually show up. As the initial investigation into Lori's disappearance began, police searched her house home but found no significant evidence linking to a suspect. However, they did notice signs of a struggle, scuff marks on the wall, and semen on her bedsheet. Additionally, traces of blood were discovered on the doorknob, and a coat hanger and a single golden hoop earring were also found at the scene. On June 10, 2006, police recovered surveillance footage showing Lori stopping at a Walmart in Alabama. This was the last known sighting of her, and no one had any idea what happened to her after that. Later that afternoon, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a phone call from one of Lori's friends, 25 years old Daryl Rick Ennis. Ennis claimed that he had met Lori on the day she went missing and thought she might have gone to make a drug deal. However, Arlene was skeptical of his story, despite knowing Ennis from when Lori invited him to spend Christmas with their family in 2005. Arlene couldn't believe that Lori would be involved in drug dealing and thought Ennis was lying, but she didn't know why he would make up such a story. Police received crucial information from Ennis himself. However, before they could investigate further, Lori's car was found engulfed in flames on a dead-end street near a bowling alley where Ennis used to work. This discovery, made on June 14, 2006, 4 days after Lori's disappearance, shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to a potential homicide. Unfortunately, the fire destroyed any potential evidence inside the car. Investigators found a hand-rolled cigarette near the vehicle and a gas can in the nearby woods, but Lori was not inside the car. Lori's family was devastated by the discovery, and they feared the worst. The only lead was the information Ennis had provided to Arlene. When questioned, Ennis repeated his story, adding more details. He claimed he and Lori grew marijuana together and speculated that she might have gone to sell her share. Ennis also suggested that Lori may have been involved with shady individuals. Police searched Lori's house thoroughly but found no evidence of her dealing drugs. During the investigation, they noticed scratches on Ennis's hands and arms, which he attributed to his dog. However, when they spoke to Lindsay, they uncovered more suspicious information. Lindsay reported that during her last phone conversation with Lori on the day she disappeared, she heard Rick Ennis speaking in the background. At the time, Lindsay didn't think much of it, as she knew Ennis was a friend of Lori's. Lindsay stated that when she asked Ennis about Lori's whereabouts via text, he replied that Lori was fine when he last saw her. Additionally, Lindsay told investigators that before Lori went missing, Lori mentioned that Ennis had written her a love letter, but Lori did not feel the same way. Lori had planned to talk to Ennis about her lack of romantic interest in him. Later, it was discovered that Ennis had told his friends about the love letter and Lori's rejection. When confronted with this new information, Ennis admitted to meeting Lori hours before her disappearance but claimed she was fine getting ready to go shopping when he left her house. However, investigators found inconsistencies in Ennis's statement, which raised suspicions. As a result, Rick Ennis became the prime suspect. The investigation led to a search of his car, where a knife, cleaning supplies, and handcuffs were found. Investigators kept collecting evidence by looking into Ennis's past, but they were about to encounter some unexpected surprises. Looking into Rick Ennis's dark past, investigators found that at the age of 12, he had murdered his mother and stepfather. The incident occurred on March 3, 1993, in North Montgomery, Alabama, where the family resided in a house. Ennis's mother, known for her kind and church-going nature, was first shot in the face and then beaten to death with a baseball bat. His stepfather, Eddie Joe Flowers, nicknamed Elvis due to his resemblance to the musician, met a similar fate. Upon returning home from work, Eddie was shot in the face with a shotgun by Rick. Following the murders, Ennis took the family car and crashed it into a fence along the highway. Alabama State Trooper John Clark encountered Ennis walking along the highway and inquired about his parents' whereabouts. Ennis confessed to killing them. A search of his backpack revealed a kitchen knife and ammunition for a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 caliber. When questioned about his motives, the 12-year-old Ennis showed no emotion and explained that he was upset about his parents' plan to move, which would require him to change schools. Investigators believe Ennis lived with the bodies for 2 days, during which time he continued to attend school. He also confessed to planning to kill his 3 stepsisters, which shocked investigators. However, because of his age, he was tried as a minor and sentenced to 9 years in jail for the double murder. After his release, he moved to Auburn, where he met Lori Slasinski. Following Lori's disappearance, Ennis was the primary suspect, but without direct evidence for Lori's body, he couldn't be charged. Ennis left Auburn shortly after speaking with detectives and eventually settled in Huntsville, Alabama, in 2007. By then, Lori's case had gone cold. In Huntsville, Ennis moved in with Abram Sissons, telling him that he had kitchen rugs given to him by a woman from Auburn who had vanished, but didn't mention her name. Abram didn't suspect anything out of the ordinary about his conversations with Ennis until he discovered Ennis's dark past. At that point, Abram asked Ennis to leave right away. Later, Abram reported that his apartment was completely trashed when he returned. However, police were able to recover the rugs, and one of them tested positive for Ennis's blood. Abram also mentioned that he had seen a Galileo thermometer in Ennis's room before Ennis moved in with him, the same type that was missing from Lori's home. Unfortunately, even with this new information, the police were still unable to connect Ennis to Lori's murder at that time. As their main suspect remained at large, the case went unsolved, leaving Lori's distraught family waiting for answers. Years went by with no updates on the case. Then, in 2016, Mark Whitaker, a special agent with the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation, launched a cold case unit and reopened Lori's case. Alongside his team, including his longtime partner Agent J.W. Barnes, Lori's case was their top priority, and they began re-examining the evidence. They started sending evidence to forensic labs for testing and conducted multiple interviews. After re-examining the evidence, Ennis became the main suspect. Agent Mark suspected Ennis due to his past, but needed more evidence to prove his guilt. In a surprising turn of events, Agent Barnes discovered a crucial piece of evidence while reviewing old files. He found an unopened report from 2006 containing test results from Lori's house. The results revealed Rick Ennis's DNA on Lori's bed sheet and the front door. With all the evidence compiled, investigators built a strong case against Ennis, leading to an indictment in 2018. At that time, Ennis was living in Pilot, Virginia, engaged to Elena Atkinson, and working for a company that built portable living structures called yurts. On August 6, 2018, Rick Ennis was arrested by U.S. Marshals on his 38th birthday, 12 years after Lori Slasinski's disappearance from Auburn. The arrest brought relief to Lori's family but shocked Ennis's fiancée and co-workers. Initially charged with 2 counts of capital murder. The trial started on April 1, 2022. The prosecution presented evidence linking Ennis to the crime, including a cigarette but with his DNA found in Lori's bed sheet. However, the defense suggested that the police might have taken the cigarette from Ennis's home and planted it at the crime scene to frame him. The defense also attempted to discredit Lori Slasinski by implying she was involved in drug dealing, which could explain how Ennis's DNA ended up on the bed sheet. Ennis claimed he had consensual sex with Lori before she disappeared, suggesting they were intimate despite Lori previously rejecting his advances. Nevertheless, his account lacked credibility, especially after 2 additional witnesses came forward with crucial information. One of his former co-workers in Alabama, Jeremy Brooks, stated that Ennis called him on June 9, 2006, the day before Lori's disappearance. Ennis asked Jeremy to bring him gas and let him keep the gas tank, but Jeremy refused. According to Jeremy, Ennis claimed he had run out of gas and needed help getting some. Later, after Lori's burned car was found, a gas can matching the description of one missing from Ennis's workplace, a bowling alley, was discovered. Another former co-worker, Terry Booth from South Carolina, shared a disturbing experience she had with Ennis years earlier. When asked why he moved from Auburn, Ennis told her he had to dispose of a body. Although Ennis's comment was initially thought to be a joke, his arrest for Lori's murder proved it was not. Despite denying the allegations and maintaining his innocence, Ennis was found guilty after a 2-day jury deliberation. He faced the death penalty, but prosecutors agreed to drop the death penalty after consulting with Lori's mother, Arlene. Arlene later stated that she agreed to a life sentence without parole for Rick Ennis to avoid years of potential appeals and ensure Ennis would never be released. Ennis was sentenced to life without parole on April 14, 2022, and is currently incarcerated at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. The outcome was bittersweet for Arlene Slasinski. Tearfully, she acknowledged that it meant she had to accept that Lori would never return home, a hope her heart had held on to.